This is Solid Snake, and you're listening to This Week in Geek with Mike the Birdman Dodd and the rest of the TWIG crew on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
Who disrupts my coronation? Everyone has been destroyed because of this freak. I won't allow it! These babies just saved this lame fest party!
You are listening to ThisWeekInGeek.net, otherwise known as TWIG, the flagship of stupidity. I am your host, Mike the Birdman Dodd, and of course, I am not alone as I trek through the dog days of summer. That's right, it is the first official day of summer. Well, technically the second or third day, depending on when you're listening to this. But I am joined by the man in the command center in Kitchener himself.
Alex, the producer.
That's right. So we have... I guess it actually hasn't been a terrible week. We're actually going to try and have a fairly upbeat and positive show this week. I'm sure there'll be some depressing news story at some point, so don't hold us to that. But it's been a pretty good week, all things considered. This past week, we finally got a break from some of the video game coverage, which means we aren't doing a show like every other day. Thank you, IGN, and every other company decided to do their virtual showcase. But don't worry, we'll talk about some of that in the news this week. What have I been doing this week? I have been kind of screwing around late at night playing a lot of Call of Duty and pissing people off. I've actually been shit-talked a number of times this week. I actually, just before the show started, we're recording this on Sunday afternoon on Father's Day, and I'm using one of the worst guns in the game because I'm at the point in COD where I'm leveling up guns that I never use just because it's something new, it's something fresh. And I had this one kid, it's like, that fucking guy with the machine gun. Because I only play a mode known as Hardpoint, where you go to a different location on the map, you hold it for 60 seconds until you get to 250, right? I know most of the rotations on the current Call of Duty cycle, so I know where to go. I usually leave the Hardpoint with about 10 seconds left in the hard point, so I have chance to be there when it starts. And I've heard people say, how the fuck does this guy know where to go? He's always there. And there are times, Alex, I've wanted to have my headset on and say, oh man, my shoulders are sore from all that fucking carrying I just did. Because it's pathetic. Like, I'll have...
Just don't be a troll. I mean, well, do be a troll, but make it really funny. You gotta, if you're gonna be a troll, record it at least.
I've really thought about it, because there are times where I will simply shit on kids. Plus the fact I know these maps so well. I know the routes people come down, or I'm like, okay, it's been about 15 seconds. They're going to come through that door. I'm just going to start firing and I'll wall bang people. And I've heard people say, what the fuck? How did he know I was there? And
well, I thought about reinstalling the game to play with you, and then I realized, no, that's a 5-hour thing, because it's going to be like 100 gigs to install, another 30 or 40 gigs to download, and then it patches it for like an hour.
Yeah.
Even on my Xbox One X. And I'm like, no, we're not doing that right now, because I'll install it, probably play one night with you and be like, I'm done. And then be like, well, that was a waste. Like, speaking of, they haven't announced, like, Activision hasn't done anything or shown anything yet for their summer of gaming.
Yeah.
So and the weird thing is, they're not listed as being a part of any other showcase or being like on somebody else's showcase. They're not part of that New Game Plus thing, which is mostly the Japanese developers. And the Microsoft showcase is going to be first party only.
Well, here's something that was just pointed out to me today, actually, and we'll just talk about this kind of briefly. The new Call of Duty, we're about 2 weeks or 3 weeks behind the latest it's ever been shown. Normally, you see trailers starting back in March.
So we're just not getting one for the next gen?
It might be delayed because of COVID. Because
we've heard nothing from anything at Activision.
We know that it's based, I think it's called Call of Duty Cold War, and that's all we know. We haven't seen the trailer. We've seen
the only thing we've even seen remotely related to not just Call of Duty, but to Activision Blizzard at all, is there were those leaked photos a couple days ago of Crash Bandicoot 4.
Yeah, Out of Time or something. So yeah,
and that's just a rumor at this point. Like they haven't even really confirmed it yet.
I think we're supposed to see something on it today.
Well, are they going to do their own showcase? Like, are they? Like, where are they going to do this? Like they've never done. Like the EA just did theirs. Ubisoft has theirs in a couple weeks, and then Microsoft, and that's it. Like it's Square Enix and all the other people are doing their stuff with the New Game Plus Expo.
If I had to guess, they might tie it into Comic-Con in July.
Which is weird that they're just not even bothering with the rest of gaming. Like I don't even think they were listed at, like in the Summer of Game, like was it Summer of Gaming, the sponsors, which is weird. Like I guess they've always sort of done their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or Summer Game Fest, that's what it's called. I would have figured they would have been part of the IGN stuff that happened, but I'm like in looking at who is participating publishers, they're listed. Activision is listed, but they haven't shown anything. Bandai Namco have a little bit. Blizzard's the same company. I don't know why they have them listed twice, but they've shown like Riot Games, all these other companies that are listed here: Sony, Microsoft, Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers is holding off. Because they're going to be showing their own stuff, I think, at they have that issue with them trying to sell the brand, but they're holding off, I think, until they do that DC showcase thing. That was that DC all-encompassing thing in July or August. But every other company has had at least one game show up at one of these events that have shown up in the last 2 weeks, except Activision. There's been nothing.
Yeah, I don't know, and that's highly unusual. So I guess
they run on such a tight schedule. It's very possible we just don't get a mainline title. It might just be a remaster title.
Well, we did have Call of Duty 2 remastered this year. We're not going to get Black Ops 1 remastered because that would take way too long. So
maybe they'll go back and remaster the original couple, and they'll just keep this version of Call of Duty going one more year with multiplayer.
I can't see that happening. Although, according to an analyst, I just saw this posted by Charlie Intel, who's a fairly reliable Twitter resource for Call of Duty stuff. They talk with the official community managers and the Activision and all that shit. Supposedly, Call of Duty makes $3 million a day on microtransactions.
Oh, so do you think they're just waiting to see what happens with the different lawsuits that are coming up worldwide against microtransactions?
Well, I don't know. We'll have to talk about that a little bit in the news.
But yeah, that was a bit of a tangent. I guess going off a little bit, but it was interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting. Other than that, I've been something I just did today. I got a bunch of stickers for my laptop that Microsoft gave me last year. I've only really been using it because, I guess I should announce this. I'm going back to school in the fall, though I'm not going to campus. I'm going to be taking online courses.
So continuing education, distance learning?
Yeah, basically. I'm going to be doing courses through Niagara College, my former college, I think you call it your alma mater. The place I graduated first anyway.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm going to be taking a bunch of creative writing courses there. And then Alex has recommended I take a course through, what was it, Seneca?
I think Seneca's the host college, but it'll be done through Conestoga would be your closest campus.
Yeah, I'm going to be doing a course on science fiction. What this is going to end up with, maybe I'm going to take a run at the RPG industry.
Yeah,
maybe I'm going to take a run at something else.
I took it as an English lit as my elective course in my business program. Which, how does it apply to business? It applied because it was considered an English lit course, and it's a critical analysis in the history of science fiction and fantasy writing, which is, I think, you get a kick out of seeing where it grew from and getting exposed to different avenues.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm really looking forward to doing this. I'm going to start at some point during the summer. Registration opens up in just a few weeks. So I'm really, really looking forward to it and continuing my education to become a bigger and better Birdman in terms of the cerebral department. So what about you, Alice? What have you been up to?
Well, I've been playing the Pokemon Isle of Armor expansion, and realized that my initial playthrough I did for the game back last year didn't save to the cloud properly.
Oh,
So I had to start from scratch, and I was like, "Oh, okay." Well, the first time I played, it was more like, "Let's just play like the casual play and get through." And this time I was like, "Well, how can I power through to the end so that I can take advantage of the expansion?" Because the expansion comes out, and you can do half of the expansion if you're right at the beginning of the game, but the rest unlocks after you do end game stuff. And I was like, okay, so I did the first half right away by having a new save file, and then I went, how can I break the game to get to the end quicker? And the answer is go to the first fishing hole you find. They never ever in the game really tell you that you need to fish, but catching a Magikarp, going and fighting a Dynamaxed enemy the first time I find it, and somehow beating it when it's like 15 levels higher than me, just out of pure luck, and then feeding the Magikarp all the XP boosters that I got, and I got a Gyarados within the first 1 hour of the game. And then going through the game, nuking everything with Gyarados, and being level 100 at the end of the game when everything else is level 60.
nice.
to the point where I didn't have to use any other Pokemon whatsoever the entire game. And just like, he would throw him out and just do it. So then I got to the end and did that. So that review will be coming on, I believe, next week's show, because I still have a few little extra things to do. Played that. I was playing just for myself and my own sanity. I've had other things I was playing, but as far as that, there was that Nintendo sale going on, so I finally got the Mario Brothers Deluxe, the remaster of the Wii U title that was a remake of a Wii title.
Yep. Which I also got. I think I bought that for Blair last month.
Yeah, I got it because I was like, I didn't want to spend $50 on it, and I was like, wait a minute, it's never coming down in price because Nintendo doesn't do the Player's Choice games anymore.
Which is so terrible.
Like I used to like buying the $30 games, so I was like, fine, screw it, got it. And over the course of 3 nights before bed, I beat the game. Now beating it, doesn't mean I got everything. I'm still missing. I can't do like the Star Road stuff yet, so I've got probably 70% of the coins, and I was playing it on some parts on stupid easy, and some parts, because when you get Nabbit, you can basically just get to the end of the level. But if you want to get any of the specials, you got to play it as other people. So I was playing mostly as a variety of the different characters throughout, and it was fun. But I feel like I don't know if I'm ever going to master it, because some of the stuff I'm like, oh, it's too hard. I want to play Mario to play casually. Like it's not my thing where I'm like, I want to, I got to go hardcore. If I wanted to do that, I would just get the Mario Maker and play some of the really difficult levels.
Yeah. So
I was doing that, and then playing stuff for review. Got a really funny email sent to me through This Week in Geek that I'll read to you. I mentioned it, I think, earlier last week. The email just was, subject line was, Alex, know more about your future. And I'm like, what? And it says, I open it up and it says, has a picture of a lady that looks like Candace Bergen from from Murphy Brown, and it just says, Medium Amanda will tell you about your future. I'm like, what the fuck? Where'd you get my email from? And then it just says, in the coming days, a cosmic.
It's not obvious.
Well, it says it's kind of ominous. First of all, it looks like the email itself is like a bunch of candles and stuff, and it looks like I'm looking at like a psychic's table. It looks like a bullshit ad for Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop weird, her stupid website where they sell pussy rocks and all that weird shit. Her cult that they buy all the stupid stuff that is like, I'm going to sell you a rock you put up your hooch for $700 and it's got mystical powers, that kind of bullshit. And it just says, well, Medium Amanda will tell you your future. In the coming days, a cosmic conjunction is about to happen, whatever that means, and will reveal many things about your future. I will be able to read what is coming to you and tell you what you need to know in order to gain maximum luck and to protect yourself and your beloved ones from the oncoming destruction. I will be providing this knowledge to a limited number of people. So apparently, this person knows about the end of the world, but it's only going to let a few people know that are willing to reserve your spot and talk to them.
Well, I don't like the way that sounds at all.
Well, and I looked at, I'm like, okay, if I click the reserve button, what's going to happen? And I look at the, the link at the bottom where it has a preview of it, and I'm like, that's just a bunch of gobbledygook. That's going to give me a virus. But Medium Amanda is going to tell me about the cosmic conjunction. So that's the kind of weird emails we get sometimes. Sometimes it's not just, we're building COVID masks and handbags from China that we get all the spam emails from. Sometimes you get one directed to you. And the weird one was that came, it wasn't to my email directly. It went to the feedback email and was filtered into mine, I guess, because it depends on, you or I sometimes will get it filtered to us. And the feedback one comes to me, but it's directed at me personally as a name. So that means somebody had to associate my name with the feedback email. So I'm like, did we have a psychic that listens to us? Like,
well, we did interview a local psychic. I think it was 2 years ago, and she's pretty nice, but she's not going to detail the end of the world to us.
So do you think the bots, the Chinese or Russian bots, like, associated the word psychic with my name and that because of the website and then sent it in?
Maybe.
Because on the website, I think the only public facing email, like we mentioned it on the show live, like what our This Week in Geek work emails are. But I feel like it found the public facing email, then found my name as the producer, and then sent it in.
Certainly strange times. Speaking of strange times, we have a jam-packed show for you this week here on the show. We have reviews coming from myself. I'm going to be taking a look at the long-promised, but finally got around to taking a read of The Explorer's Guide to Wildemount from Wizards of the Coast, taking a look at the Critical Role campaign setting for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, and what reviews are we going to be looking at from you?
More headphones, because that seems to be the summer of headphones this year. We have the Anker Soundcore Liberty Pro 2, which sounds like an earful of sort of higher end true wireless earbuds, which are pretty bassy actually, considering most of those little ones don't do that, as well as the Darius Cozmic Collection arcade and console bundles. You've probably heard of the Darius arcade shooting games from back in the day.
I did.
They were 3 monitor setups. So it was 3 monitors side by side. So super ultra wide. And they've, for the first time, had a proper arcade perfect port by M2 over to the Switch and the PS4.
All right, so we will be taking a look at all that and more as we bring you the news, the weird news, and usually some commentary that falls between stupid and just plain out there. So we will be back right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. I've been Mike the Birdman Dodd. He's been Alex, producer. Well, let's take a trip to the world of Exandra, and this is the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount. We are looking at the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount from Wizards of the Coast. This is the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition campaign setting based upon the live play show Critical Role. So, full disclosure, before I go any further into this, I am not a fan of the Critical Role live show play podcast, or however you want to classify it as. So I got this book a while ago, and I was told, take a listen to the show first, see what you think, and I gave it a few episodes, and I do not like it. I do not like it at all. However, objectively, I do want to say I think Matt Mercer is a wonderful storyteller, and when you get a look at some of his ideas, I am really interested in seeing what else this guy can create. So I was told, listen all the way up to episode 50 and it gets really good, and I don't have 200 hours. I'm lucky if I find hours in the day to sleep some days. But so looking at this, I looked at it as a complete campaign setting separate from that, sort of like as if I was looking at Ravenloft or Dark Sun or Greyhawk. Just look at the pure setting and see what I think. So divorcing myself from the fandom from this was quite easy because I just wasn't into it. However, reading into this, this is one of the best Dungeons and Dragons books I have read in a really long time. The world and the continent of Wildemount, well, the world of Exandria, I love the way they set up the world, how the gods came. There was this big war where there was something called the Calamity. There were like floating sky cities, and then there were 4 separate parts where basically you can have adventures in the Dwendylin Empire, the Menagerie Coast, Zorthas, and I can't remember the name of it. It's like the Wild Wastelands, where basically thieves, bandits, and like barbarians hang out. And it was just so incredibly well thought out, and it gives you a lot of things that a lot of dungeon masters really like, myself included. Like, they give you cities, region stuff. They may say, hey, this town has a population of this many. This is the racial makeup. This is a gnomish city. It talks about trade routes. It talks about everything. If you wanted to make your world live and breathe Wildemount, you can do that here, and I am so thankful for that, especially if you have players that are more interested in getting into the background. They're not just creating another Forgotten Realms character. You're not just creating generic fantasy homebrew number 52. Wildemount offers a lot, and specifically, one of the things I do like about it is they talk about magic in it, how it was given by the gods, but the gods have left this plane of existence. They still have influence, but they can't come back. But they gift 2 very specific magics, which are covered under the wizard arcane traditions, and that's, I can't pronounce it, but basically chrono magic, so time magic, and gravity magic, which might sound, okay, that's weird. These are not arcane traditions you'd normally find in the player's handbook. But holy shit, are these things incredibly powerful. Basically, you can choose to speed up time, slow down time, like stop attacks from happening as part of your like kind of class features. There's a lot of things you can take advantage of here. In fact, clever players could be absolutely devastating with these new arcane traditions, especially the gravity class. You are basically throwing black holes at people. There was one spell, which is a very high level wizard spell under the time magic school, and basically if you hit, you're dealing something like 12d10 damage, and even if you fail that save, you take half that amount of damage and you're dead in 30 days unless hit by greater restoration or wish or similarly powerful magics. So that's the anti-life equation for Dungeons and Dragons. It's incredibly powerful, and even some of the lower level things are dealing like 5d10 force damage. So it is insane. Other than that, there's another fighter class called the Echo Knight, where basically you could create like an image of yourself and it fights independently of you. At higher levels, you can switch places with it, and it's very neat. It's like, I don't know how else to describe it, but you're fighting with a shadow of yourself from like an alternate timeline or something like that. It's weird. It's really cool. Looking at the other character options, it opens up all the races you've come to expect from the player's handbook, but it also includes a bunch of other ones that are playable and common in the world of Wildemount. You get Turtles, which I remember buying that on Drive-Thru RPG, so if you want to be a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, you can do that. If you want to play a giant, which is like a Goliath, you want to play a goblin, a genocide, Aasimar, stuff like that, you can play as all these different things. They even have like cat people. I think they're called tabaxi, stuff like that. There's also a couple of included adventure ideas as well to set it within Wildemount. But the main reason to get this book is obviously the rich campaign setting. I think if you have players that are definitely invested in the world of Wildemount and Critical Role, if you are a DM who's really, really into that, you can create something so awesome. Like, one of the things that really caught my attention is when they talk about the Menagerie Coast and the Clovis Concord, how it started out, there's like a race of people who I can't pronounce the name, but these other pirates or these other traders came to the area, they ran into trouble, and they offered to trade them spices, silks, and other materials, and the people were like, okay, cool, you can come hang out here, and they essentially started assimilating into the local population. Eventually, they asked from their host nation, can we be annexed and become independent? It's little things like that, building in a rich history that is easy to follow, and unlike, say, Forgotten Realms, which has like 40 years of backstory for you to keep track over multiple editions if you're one of those hardcore people, this is something fairly recent. As far as I know, it's come from one dude, and I really, really like it. Like, this is something I didn't expect to like as much as I did. However, though, it was the rabid fan base that really turned me off of it. And believe me, I did want to give Critical Role a chance, but it's just not my thing, despite me producing previous actual play podcasts. I don't really enjoy it. The only thing I've really enjoyed in that vein is Harmon Quest and Titan's Grave. I guess it just comes down to the players and the DM around the table. So you might be asking, what is my final recommendation for the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount? If you're a fan of this show, you've already bought it. I also love how there's a poster pull-out map as well. Big fan of when Dungeons and Dragons does this. However, if you are not a fan of Critical Role, I'm actually going to recommend you pick this book up, because if you can get your players invested in this world, explain the setting, really get them into it, you could have such rich role-playing things here. If you want to be part of the Kryn Dynasty, which is like dark elves and drow and like goblins and half-orcs, and you want to fight against the Dwendalian Empire, I think that's how you pronounce it, I'm not sure. There's like political things. There's the ideas for like war campaigns. You could be mercenaries, you could be petty thieves, you could be just random adventurers finding treasures of lost gods that no longer walk the earth. There is so much potential here that I think the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount is going to be one of the best books in the D&D 5th edition line, and you should absolutely check this book out. If you're a fan of the show, even if you're not, take the time, invest in it, and I think you'll be richly rewarded.
News on the march!
And welcome back to This Week in Geek. Once again, I am Mike the Birdman Dodd. He's Alex the producer. Well, let's take a trip around the galaxy this week as we talk about the things that happened around the video game industry, primarily in this edition of the Nerd News. We're going to start things off beginning with the next Star Wars game lets you take flight for the Rebellion and the Empire. This story comes courtesy of Gizmodo. All Wings reported, and after teasing it late last week, EA has revealed its the next video game adventure in a galaxy far, far away. Star Wars Squadron. This time you aren't marching onto the battlefront of those titular wars or wielding the lightsaber of a fallen order, but absolutely getting permission to jump into an X-Wing and blow stuff up, or a TIE fighter. No one's picky. Well, except the Rebellion and the Empire. They obviously want you to pick a side. Although the game is set to feature multiplayer, Squadrons will also feature a single-player campaign designed by EA's Motive Studio, the team who worked on the story mode for Star Wars Battlefront 2. Following two separate squads of New Republic and Imperial Remnant operatives, Vanguard and Iron Squadron, respectively, the trailer also includes cameos from famous Star Wars faces like Ace Pilot Wedge Antilles and Star Wars Rebels Hera, at this point a general in the New Republic. We had some concerns Battlefront wasn't as bold with its storytelling as it could have been, giving us another chance in a long line of loyal Imperials becomes suddenly less loyal, becomes the stories for Star Wars. So hopefully whatever the team has cooking here might be a bit more interesting, or at least does use that trope, does so interestingly. The Alphabet Squadron books are right there, and given Squadrons operating at the same time frame as those, maybe we'll get to see a glimpse of them in action too. Star Wars Squadrons is set to release on PC, Xbox One, and PlayStation 4 October 2nd. Expect to see more from this game at EA's Play, which we did see some gameplay of it this week, and I
have reservations.
I don't so much because I like motive. I really like the single player.
Very
Battlefront
worried. 2. The game just had its official SKUs go live today.
Mm-hmm.
$54.99 Canadian. That's $25 less than regular retail. Which normally I'd be like, cool, budget title. But then I'm like, wait, it's EA. Are they giving away the game for cheap because of? I guarantee it's because of two things. One, it's going to have very little content. It's going to be, I'm guessing, 2 to 3 hours to play the Rebels and 2 to 3 hours to play as the Imperial, as far as the quote unquote single player mode, which they very quickly said, oh yeah, it's a part of it in that preview they did at EA Play, but they didn't want to go into it. It's probably just tutorials for both sides, and then it's online only, and it's going to be microtransaction to death, because when you pre-order it, it talks here, get additional cosmetic items for your stuff, and it shows little ships and skins. I'm like, they're going to be skinning this thing to death. There's going to be very little content. It's going to be online only, and it's going to it's Battlefront in space with no other vehicle. You're stuck in the vehicle in first person mode the whole time. It feels like a quarter of a real game.
I disagree with you almost entirely on this. Looking at this...
Okay, well, mark it down. If it comes out in the fall and I'm right, what are you going to do for me?
I don't know.
Because you've been disappointed with the last two games.
Well, no, Battlefront 2 I liked. I just didn't play much of the multiplayer. The single player I really liked. It was just short. Looking at this, I'm going to guess the single player campaign will take 10 hours, and that's probably being very generous. I have a feeling what it'll come down to is 5 to 10 missions per side, leading up to the Battle of Jakku. My guess is Jakku will probably be the final mission on both sides, if I had to guess, because this does take place after Return of the Jedi, although I'm not sure when.
They said shortly after. The Empire's still there.
Yeah, so this is with the Imperial Remnant.
This isn't when they were trying to come back.
Yeah, so this is before the First Order. So the Battle of Jakku is when the Empire officially fell, and the New Republic said, yay, we've officially crushed the Empire.
Yeah, it's because people always forget, just because the Emperor's gone doesn't mean it's gone. It's like you could kill the Emperor of Rome, and it could take a few years before the remnants of the Empire completely fall apart. This would be during when they were probably having infighting.
Well, yeah, because there's a whole bunch of Star Wars history I could bore you with for the next hour.
I'm imagining this is happening when they're trying to find a successor. It may even start when they don't even know the Emperor's gone. Yeah,
because I know in Star Wars Battlefront 2, you literally start the game on Endor after the Emperor's dead. You see the second Death Star blow up. Now, in terms of microtransactions, it's not going to be pay to win because they've learned their lesson there. But
I really hope so.
You're right when it comes to skins. I'm curious to know what you can do.
They better not make it so that there's cool ships, but you can only get them by paying.
Well, looking at the ships, I'm a little concerned. I hope they release more. And I was just watching. Yeah. Now, since I got the story from Gizmodo, they show they show part of the trailer, and they're just looping a GIF over and over again on their top graphic. And I can see some of the ships. And the ships that are involved in this are the X-Wing, the A-Wing, the Y-Wing, the U-Wing, which is a really weird pick because that's from Star Wars Rogue One. And I think that's the New Republic ships. I think I might be missing one. There's the TIE Fighter, the TIE Interceptor, there's the TIE Bomber, the TIE Reaper, which I don't recognize.
Yeah. It looks like 4 ships per side.
Which I'm surprised there's no TIE Defender, which was an X-Wing versus TIE Fighter ship, which, whatever. But one I'm really surprised there's no B-Wing. Which I was talking about.
Do you think it's going to be unlockable in the game, or do you think it's going to be paid DLC later?
It might be paid DLC because looking at that little GIF I was just talking about, I think I see a B-wing. It could be a U-wing flying at a weird angle.
How much do you want to bet that they charge $10 after launch to get the Millennium Falcon?
I think the Falcon will be premium DLC if it is.
That's
what
I'm saying. Like expect them to be like, okay, because you're obviously not going to be able to pilot the destroyer classes or
capital
anything.
ships basically.
But don't be surprised if Millennium Falcon's $10. Like, I'm like, okay, why didn't you just make the game $79 like regular and just include that? Unless they're making it $55 because they're not done. Like, you know what I mean? Like they're done enough that the mechanics are there, but I get the feeling that some of the ships and some of the other stuff and some of the other modes just aren't completed because of COVID.
There's some stuff there. Like I said, I'm really surprised at only 4 ships aside. But then again, I look at stuff like Call of Duty and Battlefield, and you have your standard classes, your assault, your recon, your sniper, and your support. And that's what these are supposed to represent. So I'm curious to know what they could do because, once again, looking at Star Wars ships, the B-Wing and the Y-Wing sort of fulfill the same role, though the Y-Wing is a dedicated ground bomber. Yes, it can bomb stuff in space. The B-Wing specifically was designed to take on capital ships. And when you're fighting those fleet battles that they talked about during the EA play where you're assaulting the Star Destroyers or the frigates, I want to know why you're using Y-Wings when they're notoriously slow when a B-Wing is substantially faster. So
my guess is that something that will unlock later. Now, I have put down a pre-order just temporarily because you don't have to pay anything at Amazon, and I picked the Xbox One version because coming out October 2nd, the new systems won't be out then. The rumor is the new systems are November 19th to 22nd. Yeah. So, and to be honest, within a month, I won't be using this game in the X. It'll be used to trade in probably towards the Xbox, the next system. It's the kind of thing where I'll play it probably for about 3 weeks, including multiplayer, and then I'll be done with it. They don't have a good track record of keeping my attention. I'm really interested in all the Star Wars games, but I still haven't played Fallen Order. Because
Fallen Order is really good, but it is also really hard.
Yeah, because of everything I've heard, I'm like, okay, I'm not playing it till it's $20, and EA has a track record of within a year their games drop to $20.
Yeah.
So by the time the new systems come out, I'll just buy the Xbox One version and then just play that in my Xbox Series X. Now, pre-ordering wise, you get access to additional cosmetic items. Like I said, it looks like a skin for both Republic and Imperial, and then ooh, whoop-de-doo, yellow stripes on all the Imperial ships, and then blue stripes on all the New Republic recruit items.
And it's that might mean something if it were to represent a certain squadron, but unless you're deep into the Star Wars lore, it doesn't mean much.
Well, it doesn't say that. Like if this was like, if it was like, pre-order now and you can get one of just as a cosmetic item, one of your ships can look like Vader's TIE fighter.
Or Luke's X-Wing or something.
Yeah, you get Luke's X-Wing where like it showed in the back of the X-Wing it had
R2 or something.
R2, and then you get Vader's thing. Cool. Then I'd be like, okay, that's cool DLC for pre-order. That was, but stripes.
Yeah, like I said, unless it's part of a certain squadron, like unless this is, I can't even remember what Wedge's squadron was called from those old books, and that's Star Wars Legends now anyway. So,
or if they said instead, like, hey, by the way, if you pre-order, you get a new skin that you can, like a cosmetic thing for for either ships on both sides, and you get to play as the ships from the Trade Federation or whatever it was,
or
Yeah,
like there's so much they could do. I mean, one thing I'd love to see them do, I doubt they will, if they set a mission during the Clone Wars or something, give me a Republic gunship. That would be fun as fuck.
Like play as the droids or play as something interesting. Like I'm I'm not trying to be down on it. I'm just worried. The price point worries me because like a lot of people are going to jump on and go, "Oh, they're giving us a good deal," but I'm like, it's EA. Why are they giving me a good deal?
Yeah, there's something suspicious.
I feel like there's going to be very little content, and they're trying to make this like the multi-year. Like they're like, instead of charging $80 now, we're going to charge you $50 now, and then we're going to charge you $30 a year for the next 3 years.
See, if it has the same lifespan as Star Wars Battlefront 2, I'm less upset. Because Star Wars Battlefront 2 had a really rough launch.
But they've also not said that this is coming to the next-gen system. It's going to come to the next gen, but like they're not showing off. The previews for these games were shown with PC, whereas every other new game coming out this year is showing next-gen systems as part of the gameplay footage. I don't think this game's ready. Like I feel like the reason that it's this price, I don't think they're even close to being done. And they're setting this price point on us because they realized they had to mitigate their expectations, and they won't be ready for October.
Yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Because here's the thing: what else does EA have? FIFA and Madden this year for next gen. That's it.
Oh, they've got Rocket Arena, but that comes out to every console in July. Which who cares? But
yeah, and isn't that a freemium, like free to play, and then you pay for extra things?
That I don't know whether they announced a price point for it or not.
And Apex Legends on Switch, which nobody's going to play.
Actually, I don't think so. I think Apex Legends will do okay on Switch.
You can't play competitively.
Yeah, that's going to be the problem. But because the game's so cartoony, it may be okay. I don't know. I mean, but I wouldn't play Overwatch on a Switch.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's isn't it a little 2 years too late?
Yeah, I mean this game. I mean Apex has been out for just a little over a year and change, and the only competitive shooter really on the Switch is Fortnite, and even then you're going to lose to a PC player every time.
And nobody's playing it on there. That's what I'm saying. The market is so small. Like you've got those. They announced a couple indie titles. One of them was like,
I think it was called Random Dice or something. I don't know. It was
that one looked okay, but it's like indie title.
Yeah,
and then
we don't know when it's coming.
3 or 4 other indie titles. They showed off that, and then they had a glimpse of the footage they showed of Dragon Age was the same footage they showed at E3 last year, with no indication that anything's changed, except it's like, oh look, we do have premium titles. They're just 7 years away. And I'm like, and this is their Star Wars game. EA is in a world of hurt when it comes to this new system launch. You have 2 sports titles that have had dwindling sales. Also, FIFA might be in huge shit because of the lawsuit right now in the European Union that they're trying to shut down loot boxes and any games that are associated with them. Australia is having the similar issue. It's been investigated in the States. If they lose loot boxes in FIFA, they're done for the year. Like they don't have any titles that are really. This is going to sell, but this is going to be overlooked. This Star Wars title, people are they're not going to pre-order it. They're going to be worried about that it's going to be another disaster. The price point, it makes people hesitant because if they charge full price, they would. Or if they could charge full price, they would. The reason they're not is because I believe people are going to be pissed at them if they find out it's only half a game. I'm
going to wait until the day before to pre-order.
And see when the reviews come out.
And see what people are saying.
Especially if you're getting digital, there's no point to pre-order this.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. EA is in for a rough console launch year, and it's surprising.
Yeah. So we will wait and see what happens with Star Wars Squadrons, which launches again on October 2nd on PC, Xbox One, and PS4. So this next news comes courtesy of comicbook.com, YouTube, and pretty much everywhere. Nintendo and the Pokemon Company have officially announced new Pokemon Snap, a brand new experience in the vein of the Nintendo 64's Pokemon Snap for the Nintendo Switch. According to the announcement, which includes a brief trailer, the game, as expected, will take trainers on an adventure to multiple islands to take pictures of various Pokemon. The game also brings back elements of the original game, including riding in a special vehicle and feeding Pokemon different items. Players will use the photos to create a special photo decks, and the game notably showed several Pokemon interacting with each other in the wild. Pokemon Snap was first released on the Nintendo 64 back in 1999 and served as one of the first real glimpses into the Pokemon world. The game allowed players to interact with Pokemon using Pokeballs, apples, and other items and see how Pokemon reacted in the wild. players could print off stickers using the photos they took in Pokemon Snap at special kiosks at blockbuster locations, which I actually did that several times during the course of the lifetime of this game. Fans have been begging for a new Pokemon Snap game for years, but the announcement still comes as a bit of a surprise with the release of Pokemon Go, which places blah, 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 and it just kind of goes on like this. But yeah, this was unexpected.
Unexpected. All I have to say to that is I wasn't a huge fan when it came out. I thought it was a boring game, but it's the kind of game that we need now with the very chill, nothing
Casual.
to scare you, casual. It is interesting that the graphics are better than what the actual Pokemon company does, because Namco Bandai are just better programmers than Game Freak in general.
Well, that's the thing. I think Pokemon can really make a huge surge if it appeals to a more casual audience. Because like I said, I had a lot more fun with Pokemon Let's Go Eevee, to the point where I looked at Pokemon Sword. I had the game for months and I sold it because I didn't want to get annihilated by every player online. And I don't like mindlessly grinding. Like it's just not appealing to me. And you said so yourself, you can beat the main storyline in Pokemon in what, 25, 30 hours?
Yeah, roughly about 25 hours.
I can have more fun in Persona and have a real emotion than I will in Pokemon. I don't have a connection like I had with, the characters in Persona 5. And I know I'm comparing apples to oranges here, but it's baby's first RPG, but it's not. It's the graphics are better looking in the new Snap. Yeah, like it looks really, really fun. Plus, a Blastoise eating an apple, playing in the water. It looks fun. I mean, I'm really looking forward to this. I really hope they find a way to interact the Pokemon ability to print off stickers. I hope Nintendo sets up a website where you can upload your snaps and you can print them off. You pay $5 via PayPal or whatever hooked up to your credit card, and they send you your photos, or maybe you can make postcards. That would be really cool. That would impress the hell out of me, because Nintendo already has that screen snap ability. But if I could have that officially printed off on premium paper or cardstock, I'd be really impressed with that.
Yeah, that would be neat.
So I'm looking forward to this. There is no release date announced yet. We'll probably find out more when Nintendo does their big direct, which is suspected to happen at some point this summer.
Yeah.
So we'll find out later. All right. And our next story comes courtesy of Kotaku. And this one, I can't say I'm surprised. In fact, I knew this was coming. So Cyberpunk 2077 has been delayed again, but this time until November 19th. CD Projekt Red announced that their fans will have to wait a little bit longer to play Cyberpunk 2077. It has been delayed until November 19th. It was originally going to be released in September. On Twitter last week, CD Projekt Red apologized for the delay and explained the situation that led to Cyberpunk 2077's release date being pushed back nearly 2 months. The studio said in the tweet announcing the delay that all the content for the game is finished. However, because the game is so large and complex, CD Projekt Red wanted more time to iron out bugs and make sure all parts of the game are balanced and working properly. This isn't the first that Cyberpunk 2077 has been delayed. Originally, it had been planned to release in April of this year, but in January it was delayed until September, and now it's been delayed again. Games are hard to make, folks. Cyberpunk 2077 has had a long development cycle, with the game first being announced back in 2012. This is because of the new consoles, and you can't convince me otherwise.
Yeah, the rumor was that what did they say, November 22nd?
19th, I think.
19th. 22nd is the rumored Xbox release date.
Yeah.
And PlayStation 5 as well, that week. So I think it's technically going to miss. That's why they didn't say Black Friday. I think they're missing Black Friday this year.
Yeah.
By a week or so because of COVID.
Yeah, like there is no reason this isn't a release to not coincide with the console. Because honestly, this is going to move systems, and they've already announced via smart delivery for Xbox One to Xbox Series X. If you buy Cyberpunk on Xbox One, you get it for Series X anyway. And I think Sony said you get the same thing. So
they also said that Initially, the Stadia version was going to be delayed till November or so.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is to get a launch window for every single system the same day.
Yeah, like this is a smart move to move consoles. It's just kind of the way it is. So
because that way, say what you will about Stadia, as a platform, having it release all on the same day, being able to play at the same time, gives an advantage to everybody instead of just being like, if they release it on every console or old gen consoles, 3 months before the new consoles release, and on Steam and Stadia later on too, you've just killed the PC market for it. You've also killed the next gen market for it. Like, oh, smart delivery. No, people want to buy one version. They don't care. This is an untested territory thing. You're going to get mom and pops shops flooded with grandparents that are confused about the new systems anyway. And if you just have one SKU where it's like, here it is for the Xbox Series X, or here it is for the PlayStation 5. Whereas if they have all these stickers on the boxes saying, pop this in your PS4 or PS5, it's going to confuse people.
Yeah. So I'm not too upset. I mean, that's one less thing I have to buy in September. It's more money to save up, I guess, for the next gen consoles.
Yeah. Well, because
it doesn't really bother me either way.
Yeah, looking at what's coming out, I had a pre-order down on it, and I have a pre-order for the Xbox that I have no plans on canceling unless I get a review copy for the next gen.
Good luck.
I know, right? Well, it's all up in air because it's being published by Warner Brothers Games, and Warner Brothers Games may not exist after August.
Yeah, we literally have no clue.
So there's the other question: is it moved because they're changing publishers? Because Warner Brothers might not exist. Yes, Ayla.
Yeah, that would be my cat saying hello. So
she's agreeing with us.
Yeah, she is.
Because think about this: they're talking about selling Warner Brothers Games, their entire division, right? Well, this isn't a game made by Warner Brothers; it's just distributed. Well, if that distribution network dries up, or it's up in the air and they don't know that it's going to exist anymore, they may either go to be completely self-published, or we may get a weird announcement like Microsoft or somebody picking it up.
I think they would be smart to do that. I mean, if Microsoft could nab a big developer like CD Projekt Red, I think that would be amazing.
But who makes the most sense for distribution of that game? Like, you would think, Square Enix might want to grab them because they want, RPGs. They don't know how to market that kind of stuff to the West, as we saw how badly they handled their only other non-Japanese developed properties. Like how bad they sort of bungled the last Just Cause release, or how bad they handled the Hitman license back in the day.
Yep.
And how bad they were handling Tomb Raider.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you think like Ubi, no. If it was going to be somebody else, I would think it would be Take-Two. I think it would be the Rockstar people that would want to handle distribution.
Yeah, maybe.
They have the network. They have I believe Red Dead was their first self-published title, like where it was completely not handled through any distribution chains that weren't their own.
Mm-hmm.
They can handle it. We already know that the PC and like Stadia versions, so like the versions on GOG and Stadia and that are all being done by CD Projekt Red on their own, because they own their own distribution network that way for PC. Consoles is going to be interesting. Like, they are large enough because of their back end owning the GOG website and having revenue streams there. They could self-publish, and they haven't announced anything. Did you notice in the press releases they didn't mention Warner Brothers Games putting it out?
Mm-hmm.
When they announced the initial release date, they said, "Hey, it's coming out, in April through Warner Brothers Games." And then when they did another thing where they pushed it back to September, they said, "Coming through Warner Brothers Games." This third release window change has no mention of the publisher.
Yeah.
So it's possible. I mean, I might just be reading into it, but it just seems like a lot of things are coming together. Like, there's uncertainty with their publisher and new generation of consoles.
You're probably not wrong. I mean, either way, we should have more information in the coming months.
Well, yeah, they said they have already sent out press, review thing or preview editions to certain press outlets. We didn't get it, and I know a lot of people didn't get it. I think it's only going to major print press, and like IGN probably has a copy of it. Like, there's going to be a few that are getting very, very limited, closed beta or alpha testing or whatever on it. But that is going to go live with more information when they do their big streaming thing that they're doing at the end of, I think, is middle of August.
I think so, yeah.
So that build of the game, we already know now, won't be the final build anymore. Like, they thought it was going to be the gold build, it won't be because the game isn't gold. They said it was, and then they just went in and said, "Hey, it's gold, but we're redoing a lot of the play testing to tweak it." It'll be interesting. It'll be a AAA title that at launch there's a possibility of it not even needing a day one patch, which is probably the first time in like 7 years I've heard of that happening.
Yeah, it's been a long time anyway. So we will be looking forward to seeing Cyberpunk on November 19th, I think it was, 2020.
Yeah, whenever you buy your new game system, you might be whatever that is that you'll probably be getting.
Yeah, exactly. Regardless, you're going to be playing it this year, whether you have a new console. The jury's still kind of out on that one.
Or if you're somebody who just has a pretty bitchin' PC rig.
Yeah. So moving on to my next story, this one kind of surprised me. This one comes courtesy of thehollywoodreporter.com. Scholastic has plans to launch a graphic novel adaptation of the 90s sci-fi books. Animorphs, the massively popular kids' book series in the 1990s, is finally headed to the big screen. Scholastic is partnering with Eric Feig and his Picture Start banner for the first feature film based on the sci-fi series by K.A. Applegate. The main plot of Animorphs follows 5 teens, Jake, Marco, Cassie, Rachel, and Tobias, who have the ability to morph into any animal they touch. They use their powers to fight a secret invasion of Earth. There are more than 35 million copies of the Animorphs books in print, with the original run occurring from 1996 to 2001. Well, this project...
They were bitchin' books, by the way, for kids.
They were pretty cool.
I was 9 when they came out, and the first, I think, 3 or 4 issues or volumes were $1 a piece during the Scholastic book sales. So I was getting I would get a Goosebumps book and one of those pretty much every term, and it was good enough for young adult fiction, or like we're talking like, it's not quite young adult fiction, it's not quite children's fiction, it's like that ages 9 through 13.
Yeah.
Is that what you want to call it? Like, I don't know
Pretty
what that
much.
is. Like the
Young
tween
adult
books.
Yeah, tween.
Younger young adult, like the lower skew ones. It's like you went from Goosebumps when you were a little kid to you graduated to stuff like this, where it had a little more meat to it. I love the books had that. They had a cover where you could see like the slow drawings of somebody turning into an animal, or they had like a cover where it had 2 covers. You had like a punch out hole where you opened the cover and you got to see the real cover.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they even had like, I think, the lenticular ones where when you turned it, it would like holographically show it changing. Pretty cool stuff for the time, and especially when you were paying like between $1 and $4 for a book, and they weren't just complete trash. There was that TV show, which
ran for 2 seasons.
I think it had one of the Ashmores in
Jake
it.
Ashmore.
You mean Sean or Aaron?
No, I think it was Jake, because
There's no Jake Ashmore.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. Whatever. It was one of the Ashmores.
The one that isn't in the X-Men. The one that does TV only because he's not as good of an actor as his brother. Oh no, the twins are going to get mad at us.
Yes.
But that show was, people forget it existed. That show is memorable, I think, in pop culture now for one thing. The kids all going to an arcade to play the Beast Wars video game.
I don't know. From what I understand, the book community loves the Animorphs books because the creator K.A. Applegate. Now, do not quote me on this,
Okay.
but from what I've read from seeing some of my friends' Facebook posts, that the community of the LGBTQ plus community is very friendly to this, because it explains transgender issues in a very relatable way, sort of, because they can morph, they can become different things. It's sort of being trapped in a body that isn't your own.
Which I get. No, I was saying that the TV show was. I loved it, but it was considered kind of
hokey for its time. Well,
it was considered hokey, and again, is probably most memorable in internet memes for them having fun in quotes playing the Beast Wars Transmetal, like was it PlayStation or N64 games, but they made it look like it was this cool arcade game.
Mm-hmm. So according to this, the first run of books ran from 1996 to 2001. The project will be the first feature film based on the series of 54 books, a Canadian-produced television series which ran for 2 seasons in the late 1990s, primarily on YTV. Animorphs will be co-developed and co-produced under the partnership that was announced during the 2019 launch of Picture Start. Under the deal, Scholastic Entertainment and Picture Start will develop live-action projects from the Scholastic YA books. Scholastic Entertainment's, I can't pronounce this person's name, but the one I can pronounce is Caitlin Friedman, will produce the movie with Picture Start, with Picture Start's Feig and Lucy Kitada. Overseeing script development will be Scholastic's Friedman and Picture Start's Royce Rees Darby. Scholastic has plans to launch a graphic novel adaptation of the Animorphs series via Scholastic Graphics imprints on October 6th, with Eisner Award nominee Chris Grine having adapted the first novel, The Invasion. Additionally, the company will release a retro box tin in the fall of the first 6 books in the Animorphs series with their original 90s covers. The central themes of Animorphs have resonated strongly with kids for more than 2 decades, and the time is right for a feature film that takes this captivating sci-fi adventure to another level for audiences today, says Lachise. I think that's how I pronounce it. Picture Start has an incredible track record of success, and Eric and his team are the perfect partners to help bring this exciting new series based on the adventure-packed books to the movie screens. We couldn't be more excited to work with Scholastic to adapt Animorphs, an iconic book series with a widely unique combination of exciting, witty, outlandish, and grounded elements that feel all too relevant for our time, said Feig. We know these books have a deservedly deep branch of passionate fans, ourselves included, and we hope to make Catherine Applegate and her co-author Michael Grant proud as we bring Jake, Marco, Cassie, Rachel into Bias to life for a new generation. Scholastic's other recent Hollywood projects include Sony's Goosebumps movies, the upcoming live-action adaptation of Clifford the Big Red Dog, which is due out this November via Paramount. I remember the books and the movies, or the TV show being cool. I remember Tobias got stuck as the eagle because he stayed in his morph too long.
I was looking through all the covers because I remember the books based on their covers more than anything. They started getting ghostwriters after the 24th book, which was kind of amazing. They wrote 24 of them in 2 years. But I purchased 1 through 11. I know every single one of them for sure. And then after that, I think I read 1 or 2 of them extra. And I think it's because I was poor, and they went from being the $1 to $3. I think they started making them more like $6 or $7. Mm-hmm. And at that point, my family was like, "Buy something else," and I'm like, poor kid is like, well, for that $7, I could buy 5 other books if they're the dollar books. So they did a pretty good promotion back in the day. Yeah, you're right. The big thing here, compared to other contemporaries at the time, like Goosebumps and that, is it was a continuing story. You learned about each individual character, or a different character each one, and then the stories would blend together.
Yeah, plus it carried a ongoing narrative. The war was between the Andalites, the Hork-Bajir, and the Yeerks. And I remember that I remember the Yeerks were led by a guy, I think his name was Visser III, or that was his rank or something. He took over a Hork-Bajir, who is this weird looking centipede type creature, but he could morph as well because the Yeerks are like these brain parasites.
Yeah, if you remember where the book started to really show, like, to an average reader, if you just randomly saw the first covers for the first, I'd say like 6 or 7 of them, you're like, oh, cool, people turn into animals. The 8th book was the alien. That's where they showed somebody turning into an alien, and it was like, oh, so I think that's where they really started exploring it, like, to the public. It's like, oh, this is a true fantasy novel.
Yeah,
sci-fi.
Like, I'm really curious to know how like I said, I've read that the books now are being represented and taken in by a different type of community, because I know the author, I just saw this tweet this past week where someone's like, hey, K.A. Applegate is awesome and they support us, unlike J.K. Rowling. So that's really good. And like I said, I'm really glad this is going to resonate now. So I'm looking forward to Animorphs whenever that decides to hit the big screen. So this next story, Alex, this will make you happy.
Okay.
So this one comes courtesy of Entertainment Weekly. Star Trek Lower Decks might introduce favorite next generation characters. Yep, there's another Star Trek show coming to TV, but this one...
So it's entirely about Barclay?
I think he'd be a great choice, actually.
He would be. He's a cartoon character unto himself.
So the article reads as follows. Yep, there's another Star Trek show coming to TV, but this one's different. Lower Decks is a Star Trek in animated comedy form, making it the first time in the venerated 56-year-old brand that has launched a pure comedy. No Star Trek V, the Final Frontier doesn't count. Writer Mike McCann says he pitched the concept to CBS All Access by saying, I want to do a show about the guy who brings the yellow cartridge to the back of the food replicator so that a banana comes out the front. If that sort of sci-fi goofing on an animated series brings to mind Rick and Morty, as it so happens, McCann is a former writer on the Adult Swim hit, which surely didn't hurt his pitch. The animation also looks slightly similar, yet McCann says Lower Decks clearly distinguishes itself in a couple of key ways. First, while Lower Decks is aimed at adults, the show is far more PG-13 than R-rated. It's definitely not a kid show, but only because it's a little bit more complex than a kid show would be, he says. And then there's the entire perspective. The fun of Rick and Morty is that it breaks down sci-fi tropes as it is told through Rick Sanchez, who has a very specific, chaotic, nihilistic lens. He says Lower Decks treats mythological sci-fi things just as important as a regular Trek show, while finding new stories to tell, just from a different angle. It's not disassembling mythological sci-fi things; it's treating them as important for everybody on the starship as it would be a regular Star Trek show. The angle focuses on the adventures of low-ranking crew members of the USS Cetrios, a name that sells us on watching the show as much as anything. I don't know what that means. The crew assigned to the less glamorous jobs on the city-sized starship, while the bridge crew is led by a traditionally heroic captain, does all the so-called important work. The big stories are all happening on the bridge. There's more of a social, emotional happening to the lower deckers. So it's like their job in the world they're in gets affected by these sci-fi stories. But the funny thing, too, is whatever menial job you have to do in Star Trek, it might be something that they do every day, but it's still sort of fascinating to look into the stuff that happens on board that haven't been highlighted in another series. So instead of being on the turbo lift, the elevators in the track, our guys are repairing the turbo lift. We also spend a lot of time in the bar. You see the lower deckers go on away missions, doing things the bridge crew doesn't have to deal with. While the focus is on the lower deckers, the bridge crew isn't kept out entirely distant and anonymous. For instance, the crew sometimes interacts with the captain, Carol Freeman, who is voiced by Dawn Lewis. She's sort of trying to do this balancing act that all captains do, where they demand respect and are admired, but my iPad's freaking out, and trusted by the crew, but then there also have to be the bad guy, he says. And the thing we have to play with a lot is with the lower deckers don't always get all the information they're delegated to, but they don't get to have a voice and they don't get to know the context a lot of the time. Lower Decks is set during the time period of the Next Generation, and while McCann can't outright say familiar faces from the fan favorite late 80s, early 90s series will appear, he sure does hint at it. There's a lot of recognizable characters in the galaxy at that point. Next Gen is my favorite era. As a huge Trek fan, I would definitely want to try and use some of them so I couldn't not only build out the world, but also work with some of my favorite heroes. But I can't get more specific than that. You'll have to wait and see. So my guess is you're going to see Quark. You're going to see probably Michael Dorn as Worf.
Maybe.
I know Deanna Troy's...
Yeah, probably have Cole Meany as well, depending on if he's an engineer or if he's like a commander at this point or something.
Yeah, well, he would be if it's Next Generation era, he's transporter chief on the Enterprise, and then he gets transferred to DS9.
Yeah.
You might see you could convince Brent Spiner to come do a voice. He wouldn't mind doing that.
Yeah. Well, the animation looks terrible from the shots they've shown.
It looks like Rick and Morty.
It doesn't look like Rick and Morty. It looks like a Flash animated video from 2003. It looks like Drawn Together or a lot of the other really terrible, like adult in quote comedy shows from 15 years ago. How can they drop the ball so bad on the look of the show? Why does the show from the 70s look better?
I completely disagree with you on that one. I think
you're crazy, son.
I think it looks close to Rick and Morty in its style.
How much Rick and Morty have you watched?
first two seasons.
You've watched all of it? You've watched all the first two seasons?
Yeah, it's just not as flashy because Star Trek has a very different design aesthetic. It can't go as wild as Rick and Morty.
The character models are too big for the backgrounds they're in.
Again, that's a design choice on the art director.
Yeah, the art director's a fool. I'm sorry. It looked bad.
I don't know. I'm still going to watch it. I'll check it out.
I'll watch it, but you saw the little trailer they made for it, right?
No, I haven't seen the trailer.
I've only seen stills. Okay, well, I'll send that to you. It looks terrible.
I imagine some stuff may change, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Like I'm trying to be optimistic. It's just CBS has been dropping the ball left and right.
The writer, I don't know how much. I mean, it sounds a lot like they're trying to like. There was a sketch on Robot Chicken early on, and it was called Night Crew or something along those lines, and it was about the night crew that would deal with the Enterprise D's bridge when Captain Picard and Riker all went to bed, and it was them just fucking around. And I get the feeling they're trying to stretch that concept into what I'm going to presume are 22-minute episodes. It could be funny. I mean, if the guy did write for Rick and Morty, clearly he's got some sort of a sense of humor. But I don't see this lasting beyond maybe a season, maybe two. And it's going to depend a lot on how funny the stories are. And Star Trek can be comedic because Voyager has a number of really funny episodes, I think, or at least comedic performances in it. But this, I don't know. I want to like it, but I'm not
handled
sold.
well. The problem is who they have handling Star Trek in general at CBS. The team is just fools the way they're running things.
Yeah, like I didn't like Picard. I haven't bothered finishing Discovery because it just disinterested me that much.
Don't bother. They get spoiler alert. They almost destroy the Federation, then get sent 1,000 years in the future, and that's how it ends.
Yeah, I'm like, okay.
So they might be just rewriting things from the start. So who knows? And we talked about on the other show, they destroyed the sets after filming season 3 now. So they're not coming back, or they're getting a new ship. So
yeah,
it's like maybe don't destroy your sets before your season premieres because that news will get out.
Yeah, like because the Toronto film industry is notoriously small and people talk. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. I'm sure we'll talk about this more on Future Imperfect.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
When a premiere date actually gets set. So this next story, I'm very much keeping an eye on. This comes courtesy of GameIndustry.biz. A class action lawsuit is being brought against Apple over loot boxes. Loot boxes are indisputably gambling under California law, argues a 100-member lawsuit. A class action lawsuit has been brought against Apple over alleged predatory practices regulating loot boxes on the App Store. Filed with the U.S. District Court of Northern California, the lawsuit levels claims against Apple of unlawful and unfair business practices, unfair and deceptive acts and practices, and unfair enrichment. Though the game it sells and offers for free to consumers through its App Store, Apple engages in predatory practice, enticing customers, including children, to engage in gambling and similar addictive conduct in violation of this and other laws designed to protect consumers and prohibit such practices, reads the filing. There is currently no legal or academic consensus in the U.S. on whether loot boxes constitute gambling, but several governmental and academic bodies around the world have argued that loot boxes should fall under local gambling legislation or linked to problem gambling. Much of the lawsuit argument, however, hinges on the definition of gambling outlined by the California Penal Code, which states an illegal gambling device has 3 features: a machine, aperture, or device. Something of value is given to play, and the player may receive something of value by element of chance. Importantly, in this case, the item of value is not limited to coins, bills, or tokens under California Penal Code definition. It can extend to free replays, additional playing time, redemption tickets, gift cards, game credits, or anything else with a value, monetary or otherwise. This is important because if this goes forward, loot boxes are in trouble, which is fantastic because they're like, I know in the UK and I think a few other European countries, they have to disclose odds. I know Nintendo and a few other places have said if you're going to have loot boxes in your games, you have to add something to your ESRB rating and you have to disclose odds.
A little disclaimer, but it's been notoriously small and missed by people.
Yes, exactly. Because one really good example of this was a game I reviewed last year. Crash Team Racing came out last June or May or something like that. And the game had no microtransactions, right?
Yeah.
And then a month later, they were patched in.
Which is misleading. You could sue them based on the box art.
Yes, you could. And I know in the UK, they've been brought to Parliament on several different occasions saying, we got to talk about this because there have been multiple cases of children, more specifically people playing FIFA and stuff like that, buying tons of stuff for their ultimate teams. You always hear about people, I know in the States particularly, people buying those NBA 2K ultimate team packs and people getting their accounts wiped out or people just getting taken advantage of. I know essentially like with GTA 5, there's a real casino in that game, and that's straight up gambling.
Oh, yeah.
And they know children play it, and don't think Rockstar didn't know that when they started offering GTA Online free to all PS5 players.
Well, traditionally, don't care until you get sued is the mentality of most corporations.
Yeah, and how this plays out, I'll be very curious to see how this all goes down, because the App Store takes a portion of its revenue from the microtransactions and all these freemium games. So this is going to get interesting as well. This is definitely something to keep an eye on. I imagine that some big corporate lobby is going to push this lawsuit to get tossed out.
Yeah.
Like Activision or EA especially. Nintendo's typically quiet when it comes to their microtransactions. You don't see a lot, except in like Mario Kart, stuff like that.
Traditionally, like because don't forget, in Japan, gambling is technically illegal, so they get around it with those pachinko machines because you can win little prizes as well as money.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, so they found a way around it that even if you lose money, you still get those tickets.
Yeah.
So, but Nintendo has traditionally stayed away from gambling in general, and they are still of the old traditional, like, they do make DLC occasionally now, like we saw for Pokemon and that, but you can count on both hands how many games they've made expansion passes for.
Yeah, like Pokemon, Smash Brothers, Mario and Peach Rabbids, but that was a co-production with them and Ubisoft.
Yeah, they've done some stuff where like they've dabbled in the mobile market, but they've not really dove too heavily into it for fear of backlash, I can tell. So they've been pretty good about it. Even like Sony first party titles are generally pretty good about not going like this. It's a lot of the third party companies where they're trying to make their money either as a subscription service or straight up gambling, which is what you're seeing happen with EA, Activision, 2K. The Ubisoft does a lot of smaller things. So does Namco Bandai, where you can buy things that might
time savers.
Time savers for single player missions is a big Japanese thing to do.
Yeah.
But like the three biggest offenders are EA, Activision, and 2K.
Yeah, like Activision did something really interesting this year where they didn't offer loot boxes in Call of Duty, but instead, if you wanted to buy something cosmetic, here, it will cost you so many COD points. You know exactly what you're getting, and it's worked out better for them. They didn't charge you for the season's pass. You can earn everything via Battle Pass. If you buy the premium Battle Pass, you get to skip some tiers, you get some extra crap, but it offers nothing game-changing. Unlike other years with Infinite Warfare, Advanced Warfare, you could get guns that were statistically better and give you an edge in gunfights. This year, they said, let's not do that, and they've kept their word, and I think they're making more money as a result. But
the fear is you push too far, and then you lose your audience.
Exactly, but I don't trust Bobby Kotick because he's an evil, gluttonous asshole, and we'll see what happens.
It just is. There's certain, and it sounds bad, like we don't normally dunk on people or try to pull shit, but like there's only so much you can see before you're like, oh no, come on.
Yeah, so we will be keeping an eye on this for sure. And this story has broken in the last little bit, or at least it posted on my Facebook, but according to GameRant.com, The Undertaker has announced his retirement from WWE. In the final episode of WWE Network's The Last Ride documentary series, legendary pro wrestler The Undertaker announces his retirement. For the past few weeks, the WWE Network has been airing The Last Ride documentary, offering fans an unprecedented behind-the-scenes look at the legendary career of The Undertaker. The final episode of The Last Ride aired today and includes the shocking announcement that the dead man is officially retiring from WWE. He says, "I'm at a point that this time the cowboy really rides away," Undertaker said at the end of the documentary. Undertaker indicated that he is satisfied with what he accomplished in his WWE career and that the Boneyard match against AJ Styles at WrestleMania 36 would be the perfect match to end on. The Boneyard match was notable for its innovative cinematic take on professional wrestling and earned a great deal of critical acclaim from pro wrestling journalists at the time. However, professional wrestling retirement rarely lasts, and The Undertaker has acknowledged that he may actually return one day. Undertaker is still technically under under contract to WWE, and it's entirely possible that Vince McMahon will ask him to wrestle another match. While that may be the case, it doesn't seem though Undertaker has any real intention of returning to the ring. And so WWE fans may have already witnessed his final match. The Undertaker's...
I think that if he's come back, it'll be one more, and it'll be at the WrestleMania where they finally have in front of a crowd next year.
Probably.
This may just be because he's somebody who says he doesn't want to go to another company, so don't expect him to pop up at AEW unless crazy money shows up. Like, we're talking, we'll give you $10 million to show up at one of our events. Mm-hmm. That's the only reason. He would have to do it so that he never ever shows up in wrestling again. That's the only way he's going to show up at another company.
Yeah.
But I could see he liked that, but I could see him showing up at WrestleMania to do one final thing. And the only way that happens, and we're not talking, I don't think he might wrestle in front of a live crowd or come out to do a retirement speech in front of a live crowd.
Yeah.
But as far as a last match, I think unless it's a tag match, the last thing they'll ever do is if they wanted to do a cinematic match like they did at WrestleMania, but do it against him and Sting. Because they could put up a pretty good cinematic match if they let them take their breaks between things. And that would be the final thing. Have that Sting match everybody wanted, but do it just, in cinematic form.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad I saw the Boneyard match. It was ridiculous as all shit, but I have to forgive the experience because, COVID.
Yeah.
Because this year's WrestleMania was a mess, but it was entertaining. And then I think my favorite part of WrestleMania 30 or 36 was it? Or 30, whatever the fuck it is. When Rob Gronkowski was the 24/7 champion, and then he immediately left WWE to go play for another team.
To play football because they offered him real money.
Yeah.
Vince offered him $1 million, I think, it was like $1 million contract for a limited amount of appearances over 3 years. And he was offered $50 million to play.
Fuck you, Vince.
What it really shows is as big as people think wrestling is and as popular as it is in social media, it doesn't translate to real money.
Yeah, it's just not.
Because one football player or one basketball player or one baseball player make more money than every wrestler in the world combined. The entire world, I mean. Like, The Rock is the only person that makes that kind of money, and it's through movies.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you can't compete with real money.
But and even then, it's whether or not you call it real sport. Look at UFC. That's a real sport, and they make nothing.
Yeah,
like they make $50,000 to fight, and then they have to pay all their bills out of pocket, all their medical bills and everything. They make like $50,000 to $100,000 max per fight, unless you're like going out, way out of bounds and actually doing a big pay-per-view like they did when they ended up having the Floyd Mayweather fight, and then you're getting like $20 million a piece. But that's one person in 25 years of them having a business. It's like fights, and unless it's boxing, there's not real money because traditionally advertisers don't give a shit or they don't value it the same. So as big as fans of wrestling are, and they want to argue about how it's better and more entertaining, yeah, it may be better, it may be more entertaining, it's still not worth it to advertisers, because if it was, then Vince could get people to stay. Yeah,
like wrestling is never coming back to the level it was in the 1990s.
Yeah, like if they had continued, the trend of like the Stone Cold Steve Austin, how popular that was in '99, if that was still as popular now, wrestlers would be having $50 million contracts.
Yeah. So that's pretty much going to do it for this edition of the Nerd News Network. As always, we do thank you for joining us for that. So coming up next on the show, we're going to take a look at that arcade and console game, Darius, I think it was. And we'll take a look at that. And then when we come back, we'll take a look around the weird things that happened around the world this past week. And we're going to follow some updates to some stories we've reported on previously. We'll be back, guys, right after this, only on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
Earlier last week, I awoke to a ding on my phone, and it was an email offering a couple collections of shooters. You know, the old school style, horizontal style shooters. I had to think about that for a second. Horizontal versus vertical. Oh boy. Anyway, and the company In Games, which we've done a couple reviews for in the past, offered and sent over 2 Taito collections they've got of the Darius series. I've played a bit of Darius on the on the Super Nintendo. I played, I think, Darius Twin back in the day, and I had seen one of the arcade titles like in my local arcade in the late 90s. I'm pretty sure it was it Darius Gaiden or Gaiden? That's probably what it was, because it was a single cab. The interesting thing here, and I accepted right away because I wanted to see how this is handled, because there's a lot of these arcade ports happening, but a lot of it is Hamster Corp putting them out, or you might see collections from SNK or larger companies like that. But this was the first time I'd seen a collection like this from In Games, and I thought, okay, neat. So they've separated them into two separate collections. They retail, and I'll get into that a little bit later. There's a discrepancy with the Canadian pricing, but they're retailing for $59 US and $44.99 US. Now that is for the console collection and the arcade collection, respectively, on the Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 4. And what you get with the like Nintendo Switch and PS4 version, and I actually received the Switch version because it's not going to make that much of a difference when it comes to visuals on 1980s and 1990s arcade games. You get with they split them up interestingly. So the console collection, they call it the Darius Cozmic Collection Console Edition, includes Darius 2, Sagaya, again, multiple versions. So the Darius 2 is the Mega Drive Japanese version. Sagaya is the Genesis US version. Then you have a Sagaya that is the European Master System exclusive version. They include Darius Twin for the Super Famicom Japanese version, Darius Twin for the Super Nintendo US version, Darius Force, which was for the Super Famicom Japanese version, Supernova, Super Nintendo US version, so that's the US version of that Darius Force, Darius Alpha, and Darius Plus, which are PC Engine Japanese versions. Darius Plus having an option to turn on a Super Graphics toggle, as well as the Darius Alpha having multiple game modes that were added into it. It was a boss rush game that was actually really super rare. I think only 800 people in the world ever got a copy of it. It was like purposely made as a contest thing, I think. So it's interesting there, because this is probably the only way that the vast majority of the world's ever going to be able to physically own it, or not physically, but own it and pay for it without having to go through some sort of emulation route. So, that you get that bundle of all these different versions of the games, for that $60 US, and for $45 US, if you want, you can get the other set, which is the Darius Cozmic Collection Arcade Edition. So this one includes the original version of the arcade cabinet, a new version, saying in quotes, that was made a year after the original version came out to actually make it a little easier, because it was a little too hard. And I'll get into this. These games are hard. They have tons of customization, but they are pretty hard off the default. And then there's a third arcade extra version that they've made specifically, I guess, to tweak and do some balancing themselves. They also include Darius 2, the arcade version, Sagaya Arcade Version 1, Sagaya Arcade Version 2, and Darius Gaiden, the arcade version, which I think might have had a port eventually, but that is that's a pretty big package, actually. And with these, I'll talk about the console copies first. They're pretty much not arcade accurate, they're emulation accurate copies. They sound the way they're supposed to sound. I remember it sounding the exact same when I played Darius Twin on the Super Nintendo. Pretty straightforward. You can customize a few things, but I was happily surprised when I turned the games on and that familiar M2 logo popped up. It wasn't mentioned in the press release information I was given, but M2 did handle all the porting and emulation on here, so it's top notch. And it has that familiar feel. It has the Japanese manual that you can pick up, which isn't useful to us because it's not in English. But it has that tender loving care that they always put into all of their releases. There wasn't a whole lot of extras like you'll see on some other releases that M2 does, where there's tons of things that pop up when you save things. But there is leaderboards, which I got on, actually, surprisingly, and they also have done things like saving the ability to replay videos of your entire playthroughs. You can in the console versions, there's not a whole lot of customization going on, but you can do save states, save where you are. So you could, I guess, you could be saving your state every 2 seconds if you really wanted to. If you're terrified you're going to die, but there is the option to do that. The arcade version is the most interesting part, because the arcade games, the original 2 games, were multi-monitor arcade cabs, and we're not talking 2 monitors. These were 3 side by side by side. So it looks hilariously widescreen. And when I say hilariously widescreen, I don't mean like an ultra-wide monitor. This is like an ultra-wide monitor and a half. Like this is the widest screen you've ever seen in your life. It's easily, like, if you were to get a PC port of this game, or those arcade games, or you're playing them in like a MAME cab or something, and you put them on an ultra-wide monitor, you would still have letterboxing on it. So playing it on the handheld mode of the Switch can be interesting because it's actually a little hard to see everything. But the larger TV you have when you have it docked, the better, and it's amazing looking. It's so strange. There's almost a disconnect in the mind when you're watching these, like, it's like a ton of pixels on the screen. Like the resolution was insane, because considering at the time when all games were like 240 lines of resolution, so you were looking at like 320 by 240. Well, it was 3 times wider, so it's 3 times wider than what a standard aspect ratio of 4:3 was. So I guess that's is it 12 by 3? Is that sort of, I guess that would be accurate for the aspect ratio. It's kind of insane. It makes up for interesting gameplay because there's a lot that can happen on the screen at the same time. You have full control of dip switches, so you can at any point press a trigger button and pull up a menu and alter the difficulty when you get continues, if you don't get continues or anything. You can also press another trigger button that at the start of a game, and you can, if you really want to, you can select to upgrade all your weapons to max at the beginning, but once you die it reverts back to normal. You can also pick the level you want to be on if you want to play at the very end and see the multiple endings after you've beaten it. You want to just play each last level to see all the different because this was a game that had anywhere, depending on the game, from 4 to 6 or so different endings you could get from multiple playthroughs. So there's that option. You can also, when you want to talk about difficulty settings, there's not only just an easy, normal, hard. There's easy, normal, hard as a general setting. Then you can also go in some of these games, and there's 255 levels of difficulty that you can alter up and down. And it's quite literally a slider, and it's like, okay, 255 is the hardest difficulty, 0 is the easiest. And even if you were to put it on 0, this is not something that like a 5-year-old's going to be able to breeze through. You will still die. But putting it down to easy might give you a fighting chance for some of the more difficult levels. It's interesting. Some of the games let you continue exactly from where you were. Some of them, if you die and you continue, you have to start back over at the beginning of the game. So just having that customized ability in it to be able to select how you want to start and where you want to start from, it's very interesting. I've never seen a game that had 255 levels of difficulty. I guess 256 if you count 0. So that's cool. So you got ultra wide, decent sounding audio for the time period. Controls are pretty tight. Very, very customizable difficulty and play styles. There's like rapid fire you can turn on and off. You can do different button combinations. It's pretty sweet. I'm actually really impressed. Much more so with the arcade one than the console collection. The console collection is cool if you want to collect and play some of the games that you just wouldn't have been able to unless you were an importer. That's pretty sweet. Now, there is a price discrepancy, like I said. With the console collection, it was retailing for $59.99 US. For the arcade collection, it says $44.99 US. Now, in Canada, you figure there's about a 30% increase or so, depending on the market. But I went and looked at the prices, and it's weird that the Switch version is cheaper of either of them than the PS4 version. Whereas in the States, it's the same price, depending no matter what console you want to get it on. But interestingly enough, the Switch arcade version is $56 Canadian. which is, that's actually a pretty good deal for considering all the games you get with it. And the PS4 arcade version is $60, so it's $4 more. You're not getting anything extra, so if you have a Switch, it's probably better to get it on the Switch, unless there's a sale on the PlayStation Store. Now, as far as the console version, this is where it's interesting. So $60 US, or on the Canadian store, $75 on the Switch, which seems like a bit of a jump. But weirdly enough, the PS4 version is $104. It's the most expensive single game on the store right now that isn't like a collector's edition or something worth a bunch of DLC or bundles. It's, to give you an idea, a retail game, a physical boxed retail game or a brand new AAA title is $80 Canadian. I don't know why it's $104. So, I as much as I would love it, I would say I would recommend these games. Don't bother getting the PS4 console version until they correct the price in the store if you're in Canada, because it's wildly more expensive. You may as well, if you got a Switch, that's where I would pick up the console edition of it. Now, if you want the arcade one, it doesn't really matter. It's only a few dollars difference between each system. I, for one, would say maybe get it on the Switch if you can, because it is a few bucks cheaper, and it's really funny playing it on that little screen. But if you're just going to play it on a big screen TV, it doesn't matter which system you get it for. They're pretty sweet altogether. I just hope they fix that pricing issue, because that seems strange that it's so much more money. It must be a pricing error. But overall, fantastic series. And if you're a fan of shooters from that time period and you haven't given it a try before, it's something that is unique that I don't remember seeing very many other titles doing. And if you're having some friends come over, you want to play 2-player, pop this on the screen and see what their reaction is when they see it, in ultra mega super wide screen, triple the width of a regular game, because it's really cool.
What makes you qualified to be a reporter? I'm willing to violate anyone's privacy for my personal gain and then claim with a straight face that the public has a right to know.
By the hand of Zeus, what manner of deviltry is this?
I love fake alien poop day.
And welcome back to us here on This Week in Geek. And now we're going to take a dive into the weird, the strange, the pages of the tabloid, and perhaps science. But we're going to hear things that you may not have heard before. But we're going to follow up to a story that we reported on, I think it was last week. And this story comes courtesy of metalinjection.net. Evidently, GWAR shows up to Robert E. Lee statue to remind folks to sign the petition of "Fuck That Guy." Gizmac Degasha.
What? Sorry, all I heard in my head was Jizzmaster Zero from Orgasmo.
So
I'm Jizzmaster Zero.
So Gizmac Degasha showed up at the Robert E. Lee statue yesterday, June 12th, and proclaimed, "GWAR is here. This is the result of the ongoing petition to replace the statue of the Confederate general with the late GWAR frontman, Oderus Ungerus. When we originally shared the story of the petition, it had less than 100 signatures. As of right now, the petition has over 36,000, prompting a visit to the monument by Gizmac." Now, I'm going to click this link right now and see how many people have actually signed this thing. The live update is 58,522 as of right now. And it was updating as I was talking. So, yeah.
So by the time this airs, you'll probably have another 10,000.
So when I'm reading the story further, he says, Gizmac surveys the scene, notices all the graffiti and responds, "What great artwork." After yelling, "GWAR is here," a citizen asks, "Hey, I think you're the one going on top of that, aren't you?" To which Gizmac declares, "There's a petition to put GWAR on that horse instead of Robert E. Lee. I strongly encourage that everyone sign that petition online." Gizmac concludes, "Fuck that guy." The creator of the petition is also asking for generous fans to donate to the Richmond COVID-19 Arts and Cultural Relief Fund. You can make a donation here. It should be noted that the Virginia Governor Ralph Northam has said he plans to order the statue taken down, but he has not commented on the petition so far.
I'm putting up a heavy metal fantasy statue that would terrify aliens if they ever visited the planet.
That'd be so fucking awesome. With Gwar.
It's all these statues of people, and then they see this one, they're like, "Oh, that guy must have taken over the world because look at that."
Yeah, there's like him, RoboCop, and Rocky, and James T. Kirk.
They worship demons and robots.
Have strange gods. This next story I heard reported on, I want to say Internet Today, I think, but the story comes courtesy of reportdoor.com. Aerostar Stephen Amell claims that his disgruntled neighbor defecated on his roof. No, this is not a joke. The actor took to social media to provide photographic evidence with an explanation of the events leading to the bizarre revenge tactic. Relationship with neighbors can sometimes be hard to navigate, even when you're a big-time TV star. Tensions can arise out of just about any situation where altercations have already happened previously, which Amell knows now through personal experience. He said this on his Twitter, which included a photo of the deed, which you can see here if you really want to see a picture of poop. He says,
I see enough poop in my own life. I don't need to see somebody else's.
He says, and I quote, "Our next door neighbor has been illegally doing construction for 3+ years. Cass got upset with her after we did everything we could to be neighborly. Cass called her out multiple times on Memorial Day weekend. The next day, she snuck into our backyard and shit on our roof." Stephen Amell alleges that his neighbor has been illegally doing construction for 3+ years. Construction noises are not the most pleasant, and if the Aerostar is to be believed, 3 years is a long time to be hearing those noises, legal or otherwise. Anyway, Amell's wife, Cass, has had a few verbal altercations with the female neighbor, which apparently came to a head over the Memorial Day weekend. The photographic evidence that Stephen Amell posted is graphic, so consider yourself warned. Amell's post raises many questions, with the first being, why the hell did he have to post about the incident on social media with an image? The second
I guess to shame the neighbor, probably.
I guess. The second and most logical question has to resolve around how the Aerostar knew there was poop on his roof. Maybe he had a window viewing out on his roof or balcony. The next question
He's the parkour king. Come on.
This is true. The next question would be, how the hell did his neighbor gain access to his roof without detection? Is she some kind of ninja? The next set of questions focuses on the logistics of pooping on someone's roof. Did she actually defecate on the roof? Did she do it earlier and put it in a bag to bring, or did she throw it up there?
I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure she like pooped in her hand and just flung it on the roof because savages as savage does.
It gets better. So Stephen Amell did not specify how he knew it was real human feces and not that of a raccoon or a giant possum.
Sorry. I know it's real because it tastes like it's real.
Whatever the case, this is a truly weird story, and we are left with a lot more questions. As for Amell, this is just the icing on a cake of a pretty crummy few weeks. And then the story goes on how he was accused of being a racist by a comic book writer. Evidently, comic book writer T. Franklin called out the Arrow actor on social media, and he responded requesting they talk about it privately in a rather snarky way, which Franklin did not appreciate. "I'm not so sure why your tone is condescending, but I'm not beat for it." She wrote that hope that makes you feel better, ain't it, Stephen? Nothing I do or say when I call it racism makes me feel better. She went on to claim there are others who are willing to come forward with evidence of the actor's racism. If you'd like to check out Stephen Amell's Twitter evidence of his neighbor's revenge, you can do so here. So I hope Stephen Amell isn't a bad guy, but poop on a roof. That's all I got to say about that.
You think he's shitting on his own roof just to blame her?
I really hope not, but if anybody could pull it off with impressive parkour skills, I guess it'd be him.
It's like, how do you poop on a roof? And it's like, what do you do, like a handstand and then poop and hope it fires up far enough to, like, a cannon?
There was a weird meme going on the weekend where I don't know who this guy is, but he said, "Shit up fatso." And when I saw that tweet, I thought of this one. I was about to say, well, how does somebody poop up? Like a geyser, I guess?
Tub girl.
Moving on to my next story.
I was going to say, ruffled internet memes, probably.
Moving on to my next story. This one comes courtesy of comicbook.com. West Virginians want Mothman to replace Confederate statues. This is something right out of Fallout 76.
That's interesting. No, now Mothman, isn't that a local?
Yeah, the local legend he's been sighted around like a bridge that collapsed in the 1960s. People see Mothman allegedly all over the place. There's been photographic evidence. stuff like that.
There was that movie. I really liked the Richard Gere movie.
Yeah, the Mothman prophecies. So
which was, not that it was overly scary, but it was enough to give me weird dreams.
It was an interesting concept, and I didn't know about the Mothman cryptid before that. So the story reads as follows: the murder of George Floyd has ignited a nationwide conversation about racial injustice, with many acknowledging America's dark history with inequality. One result of this has been the removal of Confederate statues and monuments, either by protesters or by state and local officials. Those removals have been a topic of conversation in recent days, with some speculating about what kind of statue would be a less controversial alternative. And it looks like a certain cryptid has become one popular suggestion. A growing number of people have begun a campaign for Confederate statues to be replaced by statues of Mothman, a popular cryptid who's been part of the West Virginian folklore. The movement was started by a viral tweet from Twitter user Human Brenipede, which you can check out below. They've started a petition. For the uninitiated, Mothman first began to be speculated about in the late 1960s, with multiple people claiming they saw a giant man-moth hybrid flying nearby. The lore of the Mothman was then popularized by both Gary Barker and John Keel, the latter of whom wrote the 1975 book The Mothman Prophecies. As the years have gone on, Mothman has had a unique impact on our popular culture, even spawning a 2002 film adaptation of The Mothman Prophecies, starring, as you mentioned, Richard Gere and Laura Linney. The movement has been partially helped by photos of existing Mothman statue, which has been set up in Point Pleasant, West Virginia since 2003. The town also boasts a Mothman museum and research center, and even holds a Mothman festival every year. In recent days, multiple Change.org petitions have popped up asking for Confederate statues to be replaced by Mothman, and making some pretty impassionate pleas in the process. We recommend the replacement be of the Mothman, a native West Virginia urban legend, one of the petitions reads. Another urban or local legend may also take the place of said removed Confederate statues in the stead of Mothman. Remove the racist, oppressive legacy of the Confederacy and promote the legacy of Mothman and other urban legends across American cities. Racism has no place and must not persist further. And ridding America of the last traces of Confederate leaders is a step in the right directions. Celebrate folklore, dismantle racism. This isn't the only ongoing campaign to replace Confederate statues with pop culture icon, with a petition in Tennessee asking for statues of country icon Dolly Parton, and a petition in Florida advocating for statues of Britney Spears. I'm more on board for Dolly Parton because she does a lot for reading, and I think she does a lot of humanitarian work.
Yeah, and culturally is more important than Britney Spears.
I don't know what she's done, Britney Spears. I think she's done some charity work, but
she's done nothing but be a disaster.
Not necessarily. I'm gonna contend.
Well, she's not mentally well. Have you seen recently?
Recently, no. The last time I kept up with her was maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
She's on TikTok and other things, and she's got that wild look in your eyes when there's not a whole. You're not. Well, she's not, the wild look.
So perhaps she has some mental difficulties, and she needs to seek treatment.
she needs to be seeking treatment that she's not getting.
Whereas
even her own fans are getting concerned.
Yeah.
So
whereas Dolly Parton, there's no question she's done good over the years.
Yeah, whether or not you agree with her conservative stances on things, because she's an uber religious person, she means well to everybody.
Yeah, and I know if you write to her, she'll give you a book for your child or something like that. So
yeah, and she's one of those people you don't have to pay her to say something nice to a friend or something. If she has time, she'll do it.
Yeah, so I guess we'll wait and see what happens with the statues of racism and Confederacy coming around the United States. Hopefully this will happen.
But here this brings up a question to me. Is this also indicative of a problem with our society obsessing with celebrities and made up characters?
I don't know. I mean, I think there's something to be said for the Mothman, and why I say that is because it is folklore.
Mothman's fine. Yeah,
and
that's fine. I'm talking about RoboCop statues of people. As cool as we joke around as cool as it is, but are we really obsessing with the wrong things?
I think it may be indicative of a larger problem, but I think the
especially
statue.
when you suggest a pop singer.
Yeah. I can see that angle. I mean, RoboCop, I can see being problematic, especially now, considering all the conversation we're having about police brutality and police reform. And unless you've seen the movie and really get into the subtext of it, there's a very debatable conversation happening there.
Like if we were really going to be doing, pop culture, icons, why wouldn't you do something like a Forrest Gump? Why wouldn't, if you're going to be making up
I would do
something,
Captain America or Spider-Man.
yeah, like or would you do the X-Men or something to show diversity? Like,
Yeah.
if you're going to do pop culture, why not do something that actually spreads the message you're trying to give?
I think Superman's a good one because he's the ultimate illegal immigrant, or immigrant rather. Sorry.
Why don't you put up a statue of Mr. Rogers?
I think there are one.
Like for the good he did, that sort of thing. Like, why doesn't Canada put up one of Mr. Dress Up or Big Bird, or you put up things if you want to show equality and positive influences. If you're going to be putting up people in the media that did that, why don't you put up people that actually did real good?
Yeah, because I think there's something very powerful in choosing the right pop culture icons, and I'm not judging. I'm judging by the lessons and the morality that they've spoken. I know, as I just mentioned, with the Captain America and Spider-Man, obviously with Spider-Man, you have the great power comes great responsibility. And with Captain America, meaning to fight for everybody. It doesn't matter what color your skin is, doesn't matter what nationality you are, where you come from. He fights because it's right. He wants to save everybody. And
like
the
X-Men, maybe even Superman would be like, the symbol of like, it's like, even though it's a white dude, you make it like the symbol of like, this is supposed to be embodying the best traits of humanity.
Yeah. Or maybe having the Justice League or something like that. Like, I'm sure there's some pop culture examples I'm not thinking of.
There have been people have been saying online a lot, why don't you put up a statue of Stan Lee with some of the creations around him?
Yeah.
The idea is, I guess, it's hard to find somebody who's not controversial at all.
Yeah.
Very hard. Like, Japan did a pretty good job by putting up the Gundam, because the idea behind the Gundam was, good versus evil, I guess. And we don't have a ton of stories here that are just purely good versus evil anymore.
I mean, one character I can think of, but then again, I don't want to pick just another white dude, is maybe the Doctor from like Doctor Who or something like that, because he's an alien who wants to help everybody.
Yeah, well, if you do the Doctor from Doctor Who, you could do a few different characters, like put some of the companions with him.
Yeah.
Or something to that extent. As far as like thinking of like prime examples of like good influences and good role models, wouldn't a Sesame Street one be good with some of the different people?
Yeah, like
in the street.
If you could have Sesame Street, Snuffy, if you got Big Bird, Snuffy, I can't remember the name of the shopkeep who helped Big Bird.
Was it like Mr. Cooper or Hooper or something?
Mr. Hooper. The other, there were the two other, I can't remember their names, but they were the other two people who were living.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But yeah, I mean, I think that'd be great. Basically anything to signify strength and unity, to bring people together under a good ideal right now. Basically anything to bring some positivity back into the world, because one of the things that is happening right now, and it is unavoidable to talk about, is we are at a very unique turning point in history. And I want to believe that people can change. People will listen, because
and
it's hard.
There's a lot of extremes going on both sides, and you don't want, it's like we said before, it's like a pendulum. You don't want to pull it too far either way, or you become oppressive to the other.
Yeah, exactly. Like
you need to find a common ground, and we need something that's like a balance. And that's why I said somebody like a Mr. Rogers, because dude was conservative Christian, but very liberal in his social beliefs.
Yeah,
so he was that balance. He was a very progressive religious person.
Yeah,
where he was like, I'm not going to force my beliefs on anybody else. I'm just going to live by the morals that are instilled in me because of my beliefs.
I like to believe what he taught children was the best thing. Now, I know Mr. Rogers has had some controversy around him, but
Nobody's perfect.
But I always think to the episode where he's putting his feet in the pool with the black police officer when racial segregation was still a thing.
It was the mailman, I think.
I think it was a cop. I'm pretty sure. And they both sit together and they just have a pleasant conversation. And that's something I think very positive right now, that maybe there's, as you said, both. We don't want to swing too far either way. There has to be a conversation. And I want the conversation to move towards dismantling problematic elements.
You're right. It was Officer Clemens. That's right.
Yeah. And I want to see cooperation and conversation happen, because as we record this conversation today, for example, not to take away from the other important conversation happening right now, is National Indigenous Persons Day in Canada. And I genuinely hope that with the right people and the right words, that real change can happen. And I know someone's going to call me a fool and very naive to believe that, but I have to believe in the power of words, and I have to believe in the power of change.
There's going to be an extreme amount of anger and violence before any change actually happens.
Yeah,
though.
You're right.
It's not going to be quick change. Things are going to get
uncomfortable,
significantly worse than they are now for any real change to happen. Anything that happens now that's promised change won't actually change, because people's tensions are still too high.
Yeah, but at least people are listening.
Some people
are listening, and I guess that's the big kind of takeaway.
It's a very complex matter. All we can hope is that people, a lot of people are saying return to sanity. No. What was happening before was insanity. It was, let's just ignore it and it goes away.
Yeah, exactly.
If out of sight, out of mind doesn't mean it actually goes away.
Exactly.
So
we have
now
to hope for real.
Yeah, the idea is now we can hope people actually are forced to work through the issues.
Exactly. Hopefully there is a cooperation that can happen between everybody. And hopefully when we come out of the other side of this, we're better people together.
Yeah.
That's what I hope.
And if statues are the first step, then sure.
Yeah, it has to start somewhere. So moving on to my next story before we get off our little soapbox here. This one's scary. So this one comes courtesy of the irishpost.com. Dublin is under attack from an influx of giant rats who have emerged onto the city streets during the coronavirus pandemic. With the lockdown seeing the effects of pest control teams significantly curtailed, vermin have enjoyed free rein to roam central Dublin and even further afield, with reports of sightings across the suburbs of the Irish capital. The recent spat of warm weather, coupled with an increase in the amount of illegal dumping going on in the city, has only added to the problem. With the HSC would usually be relied upon to control the rat population, stricter regulations on poison use, coupled with the fact that exterminators have been unable to enter homes during the pandemic, has proven problematic. These are no ordinary rats either. One Dublin City Councillor source telling the Irish Times that the rats seen at present time are big enough to put a saddle on. This new giant species of rat is capable of extraordinary things too, including eating their way through brickwork and circumventing traps.
I think the Rat King is relocated.
I'm starting to wonder here. Infestations have been reported in homes, gardens, and even cars in Dublin. The council has confirmed to the Irish Times that it has witnessed a large increase in the number of rats coming up from the pipe networks and onto the streets. We had instances where the rats had eaten through brickwork in manholes and somehow managed to get by trap gullies on the roadways, they added. During the COVID-19 crisis, the HSC did not carry out pest control in our flat complexes as they did prior to the pandemic. In the absence of the HSC, Dublin City Council continued to provide this service, which placed additional strain on resources, the council added. Thankfully, the decreasing number of new cases of COVID-19 in Dublin means normal service is set to resume soon enough, with exterminators given the go-ahead to enter properties from today. This was reported last week. So, yeah, giant fucking rats, or as they might say in Princess Bride, rats of unusual size. And this last story is definitely not my alley, because this one comes courtesy of the Independent. There could be more than 30 alien civilizations in our galaxy, researchers have found in a major study. A new paper looked at how to understand how many planets in our neighborhood could be home to alien life by assuming life develops on other planets in a similar way to how it develops on Earth and matching that to planets that could be home to similar evolution. It found there could be dozens of active civilizations waiting to be found in our Milky Way, but it could also shed some light on our own fate and suggest prospects for our long-term survival are lower than we may have thought. There should be at least a few dozen active civilizations in our galaxy under the assumption that it takes 5 billion years for intelligent life to form on other planets as on Earth, Christopher Conslice of the University of Nottingham said in a statement. The idea is looking at evolution, but on a cosmic scale. We call this the calculation the astrobiological Copernican limit. The astrobiological Copernican limit comes in two forms. One is the weak limit, which suggests intelligent life forms on a planet anytime after 5 billion years. The other is the strong limit, where life formed between 4.5 billion and 5 billion years ago. The new research used the latter and also assumed that these new species would need to develop in metal-rich environments. This is because human beings developed near a metal-rich environment due to the metal preset in our sun. Previous research from 2012 suggests that suitable minimum stellar metallicity required for the formation of planets would also be similar to Earth. Researchers were then able to use those assumptions about where life may be formed to understand how many planets in our Milky Way would be able to satisfy those conditions. Detecting any civilizations in our galaxy is strongly dependent on how well we can pick up signals being sent into space. These include radio transmissions from satellites and television. If these technological civilizations last as long as ours, which has been sending out signals for the last century or so, then it is estimated there could be 36 ongoing intelligent civilizations. While that may be the case, interacting with them would be difficult. The average distance for any possible civilization would be 17,000 light years, which makes communication very challenging. The other scenario that we are the only intelligent life and the other civilizations die out before we can detect them. Our new research suggests that searches for extraterrestrial intelligent civilization not only reveals the existence of how life forms, but also gives us clues on how long our own civilization will last, Professor Concise said. If we find that intelligent life is common, then this would reveal that our civilization could exist for much longer than a few hundred years. Alternatively, if we find out there are no active civilizations in our galaxy, it is a bad sign for our own long-term existence. By searching for extraterrestrial intelligent life, even if we had nothing, we are discovering our own future and fate.
That's a little more than creepy.
It is, because there's something called the Fermi paradox, and I'm probably getting this wrong, but bear with me. It basically says there are two possibilities. We are either alone in the universe, or we are not alone in the universe. Either possibility is terrifying. The Fermi paradox asks, well, if there's people out there, why haven't we seen them? And it's sort of like there's all these things that could happen. Are they here? Are they not here? And I know there's one prominent theory is the alien zoo. Maybe there are people out there and they're just avoiding us.
Well, yeah. That's what gave rise to a lot of the thoughts of, are we an experiment? Like the whole, I guess to simplify it.
Alien astronauts?
Well, in Men in Black, remember how they zoom out and the universe is just a marble?
Mm-hmm.
Are we just an experiment being looked at through a lens that we can't see?
Yeah. Another possibility is alternative dimension, though I don't understand a lot about that. If there are galactic civilizations out there, one of the possibilities that I've seen is they may have evolved past the need for biologics, so they may be entirely
that's true.
Machine-based. Or another possibility that I've seen, and this one has picked up a little bit of steam in some of the circles that I've read, at least on Reddit and a few other places. They talk about civilizations living entirely in a simulation. So why would you need to venture out into the cold, scary, dark universe when you can create your own perfect reality inside of a computer or similar device?
Or so that the idea would be, once a civilization reaches
certain
the
tech
singularity,
yes,
they not just like the reason we may not be able to see them is maybe those planets did support life, and then when they realized that their stars were dying, they put themselves into technology.
Yeah, I mean, or one of the other things that I've seen suggested as well is if civilizations did send out probes they may be very small. They could be entirely robotic, where we might
That's
not
true.
know how to see them. So I'm not saying there's,
or on a different spectrum that we can't see, that our telescopes don't even measure, because we only see certain types of light. Our telescopes measure certain other things. Maybe we're just looking in the wrong direction.
yeah, because I think back to the WOW signal that originated in the 1970s, where one of the large radio telescopes detected something that was very unusual, and the researchers circled "wow" on it, and that was supposedly an alien signal in a range that would indicate an intelligent design behind it. It's never been detected since.
So was it classified as an anomaly?
Yes, they don't know what caused it. There's been many attempts to point radio antenna back in that direction. Nothing. Now, there was a project, it happened in the last decade, where they asked people on Twitter and other internet forums to send messages, and they were going to broadcast these out into space. And someone brought up a very interesting point. I think I saw this on Reddit and Twitter. He says, you know what? Maybe we should shut up. And people ask why. Well, let's think back to what happened when people came to North America uninvited. It didn't end up too well for the people there. So that's just me being spooky. But
yeah, and we also have to consider we're basing all of these thoughts and scenarios on the way we as humans think.
Yeah, exactly.
They may not have a malicious intent. They may just quite literally not even give a fuck. Like, we're not even ants. Like, it's like there could be a species of alien that is like, not only are we not people, we're not even bugs, we're not even anything. Like, there's no point in looking at us because
we don't offer anything.
It's not even that we don't offer anything. They may just not even see us as ants. They may be looking, see us and go, that's not life, and then not even bother.
That's
because
true.
to them, like our biological life could literally mean nothing. They could see us through their eyes or whatever their sensors are and go, oh, that's just a storm of particles. Like, they may not even see us as the reality that we are.
That's true. I mean, at most you might detect the energy and the radio coming off our planet, but it may be so primitive or so different from theirs as to not be noticed.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at. It's like, it may be so incredibly alien that we don't even have the way of comprehending what they are.
Yeah, I mean, I, for one, believe, and I've stated this many times in the show, I don't think we are alone in the universe. As to what that means to our current situation here on Earth, I don't know. I've seen and read some interesting things. Whether that means we've been visited, I don't know. Yeah. But I'd like to believe in the entirety of the wide universe, which has existed for trillions of years, billions of years, or however long, something has evolved. Because mathematically, we can't be alone.
Or there's the possibility that is an illusion in itself, and we are part of some experiment.
Yeah, I mean, either possibility is frankly terrifying. Either we are alone or we are not alone. Either way,
it's true. It has to be one or the other. There can't be we are alone or we're not alone or something else. It's a binary thing. Either we are or we aren't.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to think, if you're willing to accept the possibility of, other beliefs, be it religion or science, you have accepted the possibility that maybe there's something else. So anyway, that's what we have on this edition of the the Weird News. I'm getting stuck.
The Weird News Network.
The Weird News Network. That's right. We are the weekly weird news that you've come to know and love. So anyway, we're going to take a small break here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. And before we exit the show, we're going to take a listen to some new headphones Alex had a chance to check out as you enjoy walking around in this gorgeously sweaty but enjoyable weather. So we will be back, guys, right after this, only on ThisWeekInGeek.net. I've been Mike the Birdman Dodd. He's been Alice, the producer. Take a listen to this.
It's another week, which means it's another review from a audio company for wireless earbuds that we were sent. So Anker sent over the Soundcore Liberty 2 Pros, which are sort of their top of the line, at least as of this recording, true wireless earbuds. So they have a whole line of them ranging in features, but these are retailing for about $150 US. In Canada, obviously a little bit more based on what store you get them from, and then there's the markup for conversion and everything. But interestingly enough, these are some of the best quality ones I've had. They're probably going to become my daily drivers. I've reviewed others in a similar price point, similar class, but these have a little bit more heft to them. They feel a little more premium. Even the unboxing of them, where they were a little bit more premium in the box. They come, instead of with a sort of flip top charging case, it's a slide up, which is a little interesting. I was worried that the slide up thing might mean it's a little bit, more finicky or prone to breaking, but I would say it's not going to like snap open on me when in use. It has a back cover that reveals the USB-C charging port. It is, I'm not sure how quick charge it is, but it seemed to charge fairly quickly. Now, these guys are chunky boys. They have a little bit more heft to them than I'm used to with most of the other true wireless earbuds that I've worn. Nothing too heavy. They just seem a little thicker, a little more substantial, and even the build quality seems to be a little higher. They advertise them as having Astria coaxial acoustic architecture, which I don't really know what that means. All I know is that it has an 11 millimeter driver. So these are a lot larger. Now, if you're not unsure what a driver is in headphones, they're the actual speaker themselves. Most like over the ear, like on the ear or over the ear headphones, like home headphones, are anywhere from 30 to 50 millimeter. 50 being, the larger ones can potentially provide either louder volume or higher dynamic range, depending on how they're designed. 40 is probably the standard for most over the ear ones. 50 is when you get into the either higher end stuff, or sometimes want to advertise higher bass, that sort of thing. When it comes to earbuds, you're looking for the most part at anywhere from 4 to 7. Sometimes you'll advertise it as having 9, but the fact that these guys have an 11 millimeter, it means that's explaining why I was hearing a significantly larger dynamic range in the lows and highs. So there's also a 8-hour playtime on these, which is explaining why they got a larger driver and they have a larger playtime than some of the other ones on the market. So this is 8 hours straight, and I got about 7 hours at almost max volume because I was cranking these suckers. And you get 3 more charges from the charging case itself. And it does have a quick charge capability in that if you put them in, if they're completely dead, you put them in your charging case, and in 10 minutes you'll get up to 2 hours of play. And that's true. I tested that a couple times, and it seemed to work just fine. Now there is a fast charging, USB port on the back of here. So if you have a fast charge USB-C, it also, I did not know this initially because I don't have one at home yet, but it is a Key or QI compatible wireless charger. So if you sit the little charging station on top of your wireless charger, it's going to work there too. So there is some it says quad microphone calls. I did use it to talk to some family, and they said that they heard me pretty clearly, almost as if I had the actual phone like right up to my mouth, sort of thing. So that's always a concern with me. They said that I sounded a little off, and I said, "What do you mean?" "Well, you sound really clear." I went, "Well, isn't that good?" And they said, "Yeah, but you don't sound like you're on a cell phone." So there is some noise reduction and background noise handling that's done with these, which it does on the fly, which seemed to work pretty well. There's there's a listing of a bunch of different musicians that have endorsed it and said that these are great, and I'm not going to go into that. You can go on the website and check it out if you're really concerned of what celebrities think of these guys. I'll say that it has a really balanced sound. There are some applications you can get to customize the harmonics of it and do what you need to do. So overall, if you compare them, and they actually have a listing on their website comparing to what they see as their competitors, some Sonys, some Sennheisers, Jabra, and some Samsung. I guess they include the Samsung Galaxy Buds to compare. It has higher battery life than all the other ones in its same price class. Same with the charging time. It also has the wireless charging that only the Samsung Galaxy Buds have. There is an option for mono and stereo. Now, what does that mean? A lot of wireless earbuds now force you to use both at the same time. So if you're trying to turn one on or just one, and you don't want to have the other one on, you leave it in your case, sometimes it might not work at all, or it might only work if you have a specific ear, because sometimes they connect to one ear and then it requires that you connect to the other one in pairing mode before it'll actually work, or maybe just the right ear will work, and you can't do that with the left ear if you want the left ear to work by itself. These guys work independently, so you can connect, and I've tested this, you can connect one, you can't connect, to two different devices at once with or anything like that, but if I want to just have my one ear in while I want to listen to something else, I just want to have the old school talking on the phone earpiece, you can do that with these guys. And the second you turn on the other one, it'll auto pair to it. And I never had to do anything to make it sync up. It just auto does it. And it also includes 7 different pairs of ear tips, which is pretty sweet. There's a lot more than most. Most of them usually include 3 or 4. It is Qualcomm aptX certified, so higher quality audio than most other ones in the market. It's also half the price of the Sennheisers and about 70% the price or so of the Sonys and the Jabras. And it is about $20 more than the Samsungs, but it's trying to compare and just show that the built-in Samsung ones are kind of crappy when in comparison. A pretty good time with these guys. These are going to be my daily drivers until I find anything better. I found that the charging case itself fits really well in my pocket, and it's not too heavy or anything. So it's kind of like magic. I don't know how they can get that much charging time out of it when it's such a small package. But for $150, as far as the ones we've reviewed, these are the best on the market.
I'm worried that Ajax might be in the clutches of the filthiest, greediest animals on Earth. Cable system operators?
And that is the kind of show it has been here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. We've talked about all things from The Undertaker to Star Wars to maybe some statues that we can maybe tear down and replace them with good ones. And not pooping on people's roofs out of revenge. It has certainly been a weird show, a thought-provoking show, and maybe not in the ways you think.
That's what we call a spite shit. So, just thinking of the other guys.
So, yeah, it has been an interesting show here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. So, if you are listening to this on Monday, you heard our Twig Sunday Funnies show, which was the crossover show we did with myself, Alex, and JT. Our next show on Twig Sunday Funnies, we're going to be talking about the Valiant comic universe, which I'm really looking forward to reading. So I'll be picking up some of those books on Comixology really soon, or borrowing one of Alex's Bloodshot books. So that'll be something for us to talk about. We'll be looking forward to that. As of this recording, Alex is coming over for a socially distant visit, but we are sitting down.
First one in almost 4 months.
Yep. We are sitting down to work on Loose Cannon. We have 2 episodes proposed. We are talking with Sharknado. We just haven't had any communication from that team, so I guess they're really busy since California, certain parts of it might be opening up, so I presume they're just super busy.
Yeah,
and that's okay.
It's either last Monday or today when this drops, as when they're opening up for limited TV production.
Yeah,
to get prepped for the fall, because otherwise they're not going to have anything to show on TV.
Yeah, it's going to be busy. So I don't blame them. I did get an email from the producer, David Latt. He did give me a series of answers to some questions. So we will talk about the Sharknado franchise as our inaugural episode. And then we're going to talk about American Ninja. Me and Alex are going to screen that tomorrow and talk about the Michael Dudikoff, who is amazing. Also coming...
a 1-2 punch with some Christopher Walken movies that 1 I haven't seen and 2 you haven't seen.
Okay, so yeah, it's going to be a good day of movies tomorrow for me and Alex. Also coming up, I actually just got talking with Andrew Roebuck, and I might be doing a podcast with him about Tremors, which should be really exciting. I haven't seen that movie in a number of years, so I'm looking forward to watching that again.
You got to watch the last couple direct-to-video ones, because I don't think... Have you watched them since they did the 4th one?
Not since the 4th one, no. So
because they did, I think, 2 with Jamie Kennedy.
Yep.
And then a 3rd one is coming out now in the fall.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to getting back into those movies because I thoroughly enjoyed the first 3, and the 4th one with Jamie Kennedy because I interviewed him for it was a lot of fun too.
Was he the 4th one was the prequel?
No, maybe I'm thinking the 5th one then. Maybe.
So then you did see the 5th one. So yeah. It's just the newest one you haven't seen and the one that came after.
Yeah. So we're going to be doing that. I know on Nerd to the Third Power. You should have heard of Fools Who Ride most recently. I know we're recording a Disney afternoon show I'm going to be talking about Goof Troop, which was one of my favorite shows of the Disney afternoon way back in the 90s. I'd love to see this show get a revival at some point. I know they've touched upon it in the new DuckTales.
Yeah, and I know you record with them. It's a couple Americans and a Brit, right?
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting if you could get them to watch the Raccoons.
Yeah, unfortunately, that was a different production. But if I could convince them for other shows.
I'm saying as far as it's a different production, but CBC used to air a lot of this stuff, like they blended it together with Disney stuff.
Yeah.
So you'd get you'd get like DuckTales, Gummy Bears, Raccoons. They throw it in there for the Canadian content and so on. That's probably the closest we got to that programming block having its own equivalent here.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what else we got coming up in the next little bit. I once again am waiting on those pile of books from Ken the fan, who sent me all the Dragonlance stuff. So hopefully that didn't get caught in customs or is COVID.
Well, they're holding. I noticed when we've had some products sent up for review, it's like, it's arrived in your city. And I'm like, expected delivery tomorrow. And then I had to wait 5 days. They're holding them before they deliver them.
So, yeah, I might see that this week.
There might be a wait. The other thing is, other than just, waiting for stuff like that, we've got other productions that, we want to get done, obviously, with Loose Cannon and that. But prototype-wise, we're still waiting on some more stuff to come out. We were going to do one. We were going to talk about the EA. We may as well just talk about it now. They showed very little except for Star Wars.
Yep, Star Wars and Skate.
Yeah,
okay, cool.
And then they're going to be, as of the breaking news as of now, they're going to be showing off the first Activision title, I guess, which is going to be
a new Crash Bandicoot.
The new Crash Bandicoot. Jeff Keighley tweeted that out. They're showing that off. By the time this airs, I think this airs before it premieres. So in a couple hours, it'll be out, and then from there, we'll cover more if there's more other showcases or big things come out. But it doesn't appear to be anything on the books that's major from now until, I guess, when Ubisoft does something. I'm just going to see right now, because I had a schedule put together where I was like, hey, we can record more prototypes and we can get all this stuff in it. But then there wasn't a whole lot. Like, it was sort of less than I was expecting to be announced. So we've got, Crash Bandicoot reveal is the 22nd. We'll do let me see here. Looking at this, we will do one after the New Game Plus Expo, which is the 23rd.
Yep.
The 24th is the Marvel Avengers War Table. Should we bother?
No. Don't care enough.
Yeah, we'll mention that on the next one if there is something, because
it'll be on the it'll be on the Twig Nerd or the Twig main show if there's anything relevant.
Yeah, because the New Game Plus Expo is Sega, Atlas, many other companies. So we'll talk about that one in a separate show, a short one maybe. Then there's the Avengers. The next day after that, the 25th, is the Cyberpunk showcase.
Okay, so we will record some prototypes this week.
Yeah, there's be a couple things, but for sure we'll be covering the New Game Plus Expo.
Yeah, so we will be looking forward to that. So I guess also as a programming reminder, from July 1st to the 14th, we are recording remarkably little. We are taking 2 weeks off for summer vacation. I intend to play Persona 4 Golden from start to finish and try and get a good chunk of the way through Xenoblade Chronicles. So that is my summer vacation.
Yeah, JRPG July. And don't be surprised, it may turn into 3 weeks.
Yeah.
We will have content coming, just the main show probably won't come unless there's like major breaking news. But we will still cover in July, even if it'll be in the middle of our break, but July 12th and 14th is Ubisoft Forward, and then the Stadia is doing their big connect, and they're apparently announcing something big, they said. So there will be the week of the 12th, a prototype regardless.
Yeah, so we're just going to take it a little bit easy. So
yeah.
Anyway, folks, so that's pretty much going to do it for us here on the show. Like I said, I guess you'll hear from us a bunch this week. So I guess until next time, we have been
Alex, the producer. I've
been Mike the Birdman, trying out my new phrase, be excellent to each other. We'll catch you guys next time right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
Well, that's our show. All right, here's the deal. Every time you watch my show, I will send you $40.
Checks will not be honored. You've been listening to This Week in Geek, your source for guaranteed nonsense or your money back. Tune in next week for more info on the most important things you didn't need to know. Check out our website at ThisWeekInGeek.net and subscribe to our podcast through iTunes or any podcatcher. If you'd like to comment on this episode, head over to this episode's post at ThisWeekInGeek.net and leave a comment through Facebook Connect. Follow us on Twitter at ThisWeekInGeek.net and follow our Instagram at twig_official_podcast. Social media not your thing? Send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. We'll see you next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
Just when you think this show is terrible, something wonderful happens. What? It ends.
I have to go. Somewhere there is a crime happening.